We're told that inheriting something means receiving a gift, a blessing from those who loved us, a piece of their heart, wrapped in property deeds and dusty heirlooms. We're promised that grandmothers leave us recipes and quilts, and gentle memories that smell like lavender and bread. But when you inherit a cabin deep in woods that swallow sound, when you find chains bolted into concrete and a creature that shouldn't exist whimpering in the dark, you learn the devastating truth. Sometimes the people we loved most were monsters. And sometimes, the monsters they created are the only honest things they left behind. My name is Elena Winters, and I am a collector of broken things, not by choice, by necessity. When you're born without the ability to shift while everyone around you transforms into wolves and bears and creatures of myth and muscle, you learn to find value in what others discard. Broken pottery, torn books, friendships with humans who don't belong in a world ruled by predators wearing human skin. I collected broken things because I understood them. Because I was them. My grandmother understood that too, or so I thought. The letter came on a Tuesday, delivered by a lawyer who wouldn't meet my eyes. Professional courtesy. Probably. Shifters don't like looking at defects too long. It reminds them that their perfect genetic lottery could have gone differently. Miss Winters, I'm sorry for your loss. Your grandmother, Miriam Winters, left explicit instructions that her property in the Black Pine Forest be transferred to you upon her death. There are conditions. I signed where he pointed. I didn't ask about the conditions. What did it matter? Grandmother Miriam had been the only family member who still called me by my name, instead of the broken one. If she wanted me to inherit her cabin, I'd take it. Even if it meant going back to those woods. Especially if it meant going back to those woods. Because here's what nobody tells you about being powerless in a world of predators. You become invisible, and invisible people hear things, see things, learn things that the powerful assume are secret. I'd heard the whispers about grandmother Miriam for years. The too long trips to her cabin. The way other shifters stepped aside when she walked past. Not out of respect, but something sharper, something that looked like fear. I'd ignored it. Loved her anyway. She'd taught me to read, to think, to survive with nothing but my mind as a weapon. Now she was dead, and I was driving down a dirt road that hadn't seen maintenance in a decade, toward a cabin that appeared on no maps, carrying questions I wasn't sure I wanted answered. The forest closed around my car like a fist. Chapter 1. The basement door. The cabin was smaller than I remembered, or maybe I'd just gotten bigger. Last time I'd been here, I was 12, still young enough to hope my shift might come late, that I'd wake up one morning with the ability to transform, to finally belong. I was 32 now. Hope was a luxury I'd abandoned somewhere around year 14. The structure looked, time wrong, not decayed, exactly, maintained, but maintained by someone who didn't care about beauty, only function. The windows were reinforced with iron bars painted to look decorative. The door had 3 separate locks, each requiring a different key from the ring the lawyer had given me. Grandmother, what were you keeping out? I murmured, fitting the first key into the top lock. Or keeping in. The door opened with a sound like a exhale, as if the house itself had been holding its breath. The smell hit me first. Medicinal, antiseptic, wrong for a cabin that should smell like pine and dust and old memories. This smelled like a hospital. Like a laboratory. The main room was sparse. A table, 2 chairs, a kitchenette that looked functional but unused. Everything was clean. Too clean. The kind of clean that hides evidence rather than creates comfort. On the table sat a single envelope with my name written in grandmother Miriam's precise handwriting. I should have opened it first. Should have read her explanation before exploring. But I'd spent my entire life being careful, being obedient, being small and quiet and grateful for whatever scraps of dignity the shifter world allowed me. And I was tired. So desperately tired. So I walked past the envelope and started opening doors. Bedroom. Perfectly made bed. No personal items. Bathroom. Spotless, industrial. Closet. Empty, except for a winter coat. 3 sizes too large. And then the basement door. It wasn't hidden. Wasn't locked. Just a simple wooden door with a handle worn smooth by years of use. But something about it made my skin prickle. Made some ancient prey instinct in my human brain scream, don't. I opened it anyway. The stairs descended into darkness, thick enough to feel solid. I found a light switch, and fluorescent bulbs flickered to life, revealing concrete walls, a cement floor, and chains. Heavy iron chains bolted into the wall, the kind used to restrain something powerful, something dangerous. The concrete around the bolts was cracked from strain, gouged with marks that looked like claw scratches, and in the corner, curled into a ball so tight he seemed to be trying to disappear into himself, was a boy. No. Not a boy. A wolf pup. No. Not that either. Something in between. He was maybe 16, maybe 18, hard to tell with shifters, especially ones this malnourished. His human form was thin enough that I could count his ribs through the dirty shirt that hung off his frame, but his eyes, when they snapped open at the sound of my footsteps, were pure wolf, amber and ancient, and absolutely terrified. A silver collar circled his neck, connected to the chains by links that looked fused together. Silver, the one metal that burns shifters, that prevents transformation, that causes excruciating pain. He'd been collared long enough that the skin around the metal was scarred. Not fresh wounds. Old ones. Years old. "Oh my God," I whispered. He flinched at my voice, scrambling backward until the chains went taut and he couldn't retreat further. A sound escaped his throat, not quite a growl, not quite a whimper. A warning and a plea mixed together. I raised my hand slowly, the way you would with a wild animal. "I'm not going to hurt you." His lip curled, revealing canines too sharp for his human face. He didn't believe me. Why would he? The last person he'd trusted had chained him in a basement. "My name is Elena," I continued, keeping my voice soft, steady. I didn't know you were here. I didn't know about any of this." His eyes tracked my every movement. Calculating. Feral. But underneath the fear and aggression, I saw something else. Intelligence. This wasn't some mindless beast. This was someone trapped in a nightmare, and he was still in there. Still thinking. Still aware. "I'm going to get you out," I said. "I promise." His eyes narrowed. And then he did something that stopped my heart. He laughed. It was a horrible sound, raspy and broken, like he'd forgotten how. Or like he'd learned that promises were just another word for lies. "She said." "That too," he rasped. His voice was rough from disuse, barely more than a growl shaped into words. "Every time. Before she hurt me worse." The basement suddenly felt colder. "Who said that?" I asked, though I already knew. Already felt the truth settling into my bones like ice water. "The grandmother," he whispered, and his amber eyes held mine with devastating clarity. "Your grandmother. She's the one who put me here." Chapter 2. The Letter and the Lie. I should have run. Every survival instinct I'd developed over 32 years of being prey in a predator's world screamed at me to get back in my car, drive until the forest released me, and never look back. But I'd spent my whole life running from rejection, from humiliation, from the truth that I would never be enough, in a world that measured worth in fangs and claws. And this boy, this creature chained in my grandmother's basement, wasn't running. He couldn't. Someone had to stay. "How long?" I asked. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "How long have you been down here?" He tilted his head, the movement too fluid, too animal. "Time is different. In the dark, she would come, feed me, hurt me, leave, sometimes days between, sometimes." He trailed off, his gaze going distant. "Sometimes forever." "Years?" I pressed. "Has it been years?" "Since I was 13. His amber eyes refocused on me with unsettling intensity. "I'm 19 now, I think, maybe 20. The moon still calls, but I can't answer. The silver won't let me. 6 years. Maybe 7. Chained in a basement by a woman who'd taught me about kindness, about the value of broken things." My stomach twisted violently. I pressed a hand against the concrete wall to steady myself, the cold seeping through my palm like judgment. The basement suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. How many times had I visited this cabin as a child? How many times had I sat upstairs reading her books, drinking her tea, listening to her stories about the dignity in all creatures while this boy suffered in the dark below my feet? "I'm going to be sick," I whispered. "First door on the left," he said flatly. "She used to vomit too. After. When the experiments got particularly, he made a sound that might have been a laugh once. Inventive. I didn't make it to the bathroom. I vomited right there on the basement floor. My body rejecting not just my lunch but the entire foundation of my memories. When the heaving stopped, I found him watching me with something that looked almost like satisfaction. Good, he said softly. You should feel it. The horror. Most people just justify it. Explain it away. She had good reasons. She was trying to help. It was for the greater good. His voice took on a mocking lilt that made each phrase sound like a slap. At least you're honest enough to be disgusted. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand, tasting bile and shame. I'm going to go upstairs, I said slowly, watching him tense like a spring coiling tighter. I'm not leaving. I'm going to find keys, bolt cutters, something to get that collar off. Do you understand? He said nothing, just watched me with those two old eyes that had learned not to hope, learned that hope was just another form of torture. I climbed the stairs on shaking legs, my mind refusing to process what I'd just seen. Each step felt like walking through water, through time itself, through the disintegration of everything I thought I knew about the woman who'd raised me when my own parents couldn't look at their defective daughter without flinching. The main room looked different now, not sparse, but deliberately empty, sterile, a stage set rather than a home. I could see it now, how the furniture was positioned for functionality rather than comfort, how there were no photographs, no personal touches, nothing that suggested a human being actually lived here. This wasn't a cabin, it was a facility, a prison dressed up as a retreat. The envelope on the table seemed to pulse with malevolence, its crisp white edges too perfect, too intentional. I tore it open with trembling fingers, and my grandmother's precise handwriting swam before my eyes. My dearest Elena, if you're reading this, I'm dead, and you've found the boy. I imagine you're horrified, angry, questioning everything you thought you knew about me. Good. You should question. It's the only way to survive what comes next. His name is Cale. He came to me when he was 13, not as a prisoner, but as a patient. His pack rejected him, you see. Called him cursed. He shifts, Elena, but not into one form. He shifts into 3. Wolf. Bear. Something else. Something that shouldn't exist. The council wanted him executed. Too dangerous, they said. Too unpredictable. An abomination that proved the bloodlines were corrupting. They brought him to me in chains, barely more than a child, and told me I had 2 options. Fix him, or kill him. Those were the only mercies they would allow. I chose the 3rd option. I chose to study him. I made a deal with the council. I would contain him, research him, and when I discovered what made him this way, I would fix him, or kill him, whichever came first. They gave me 6 years. Unlimited resources. Complete autonomy. All I had to do was keep him hidden and keep him controlled. I spent those 6 years trying. 6 years of experiments, of silver and restraints and methods I'm not proud of. 6 years of pushing the boundaries of shifter biology, of testing every theory, every hypothesis. 6 years of watching a child grow into a young man, while I systematically destroyed any chance he had at a normal life. 6 years, and I learned only one thing. He can't be fixed. Because he was never broken. The world is changing, Elena. The council grows more paranoid every year. They're hunting anything that doesn't fit their narrow definition of normal. Anyone who threatens their perfect hierarchy. Anyone who proves that their precious bloodlines aren't as pure as they claim. Sound familiar? You and Cale are the same. In your way, you can't shift. He shifts too much. Both of you are evidence that the council's ideology is a lie. Both of you threaten their power simply by existing. I'm leaving him to you because you're the only person I trust to make the right choice. Not the legal choice. Not the safe choice. The right one. In my bedroom, behind the loose board under the bed. You'll find keys to his collar and enough money to disappear. $50,000 in unmarked bills. The council doesn't know about this cabin, I made sure of it. I bought it under a false name, paid in cash, kept it off every record. But they will find out, eventually. They always do. You have maybe a week, maybe less. The council thinks Cale died 3 months ago. I told them the experiments failed, that his body couldn't handle the stress, that I'd disposed of the remains. They believed me because they wanted to believe me, because admitting they'd given me 6 years and unlimited resources to torture a child and gotten nothing in return would make them look foolish. But they'll come checking eventually. They always do. Save him, Elena. Or kill him, but don't let them have him. I'm sorry I couldn't be the woman you thought I was. I'm sorrier still that I'm making you clean up my mess. But you're strong in ways I never was. You survived being broken in a world that worships strength. That makes you the only person who can teach Cale to survive being whole. There's a journal with the money, my research notes, 6 years of data on what he is, what he can do, what breaks him and what doesn't. You'll need it, not to fix him but to protect him, to understand him. One more thing. Don't trust the medication in the bathroom cabinet. It's not medicine. It's suppressants. Chemicals designed to keep him docile, compliant, easier to manage. I used them when the experiments got too dangerous. When he got too strong, flush them. All of them. He needs to be fully himself for what comes next. Grandmother Miriam, P.S. He'll hate you at first. Let him. Hate is honest. It's the gratitude you need to worry about. Gratitude makes people compliant. Hatred makes them survivors. The letter slipped from my fingers, fluttering to the table like a dying bird. She'd tortured him. For 6 years. In the name of science, of protection, of some twisted version of mercy. And now she'd dumped the consequences in my lap like an inheritance I never asked for. Wrapped up with blood money and research notes and advice on how to manage someone she'd broken. Did you know? His voice drifted up from the basement, rough and accusing, somehow cutting through 2 floors and my spiraling thoughts. Did you know what she was? No. I pressed my palms against the table, trying to steady myself, trying to ground my body when my mind was free-falling. I knew she was brilliant, respected. I knew other shifters feared her, but I thought it was because she was powerful, not because she was a monster, he finished. And I could hear him shifting down there, chains rattling like accusations. You can say it. That's what she called me. Every time I screamed. Every time I begged. You're a monster, Cale. I'm trying to save you from yourself. As if salvation required silver and scalpels. The bitterness in his voice could have stripped paint, could have burned through steel. I moved to the bedroom on autopilot, my body functioning while my mind tried to reconcile the grandmother who'd taught me to read with the scientist who'd spent 6 years torturing a child. The room was as impersonal as the rest of the cabin, a bed with military corners, a single nightstand, curtains that looked functional rather than decorative. I found the loose board exactly where Grandmother Miriam had said, pried it up with shaking fingers. Inside, 3 keys on a ring, bundled stacks of cash held together with rubber bands, and a small leather journal whose cover was worn smooth by frequent handling. I took all of it back downstairs, each step feeling like descending into hell, or maybe ascending out of it. I couldn't tell anymore. Cale tracked my approach like a cornered animal, his body coiled tight despite the chains preventing any real escape. When I got within arm's reach, he bared his teeth in a warning snarl that was more reflex than real threat. I'm going to unlock the collar, I said quietly, kneeling just outside his striking range, keys ready. It's going to hurt when it comes off. The silver has been burning you for years. Your body will want to shift immediately. Try not to. Why? The word was half growl, half broken plea. Why would you help me? She was your family. Your blood. For all you know, everything she wrote in that letter is true. Maybe I am dangerous. Maybe I am a monster. Maybe she was protecting the world from me. She was protecting power, I said. There's a difference. His amber eyes narrowed. You don't know that. I know what it's like to be called broken by people who are terrified of anything different. I held up the keys so he could see them, see that they were real. I know what it's like to be measured against an impossible standard and found wanting. I know what it's like to be invisible and disposable and wrong simply for existing. You can't shift, he said. It wasn't a question. No. So you understand being powerless. He laughed, that horrible rasping sound. That doesn't mean you understand being too powerful, being feared instead of pitied. They're not the same thing. Maybe not, I admitted. But they're both forms of exile. And I'm tired of pretending broken things don't deserve better. Even if you're not broken. Especially if you're not. Something flickered in his amber eyes. Not trust. Not yet. But maybe the possibility of it. Maybe the faintest ember of hope that someone, somewhere, might see him as something other than a problem to be solved or a threat to be eliminated. If I shift, he said slowly, carefully, as if testing each word before releasing it, I won't be able to control which form. Could be wolf. Could be bear. Could be. He swallowed hard, his throat working around words that clearly caused pain. The other thing. The thing that made them call me cursed. The thing that made my own mother scream when she saw it. Then we'll deal with it. I met his gaze steadily, willing him to believe me even though I had no idea if I could deliver on that promise. I've spent my entire life being afraid. I'm done. A lie. I was absolutely terrified. But some lies are worth telling. Some lies are the only way to speak truth that's too raw to face directly. He studied me for a long moment, those two old eyes seeing straight through to all my fear and doubt and barely contained panic. Then slowly, so slowly, he turned his head to expose the collar's lock. The movement was an act of trust so profound it made my chest ache. My hands shook as I fitted the first key. It didn't work. The second key slid in but wouldn't turn. The third key, the smallest one, almost delicate, clicked into place like it belonged there. The silver had fused to his skin in places, the scarring so deep I could see where his body had tried to heal around it and failed, again and again, for 6 years. This close, I could smell infection, old blood, desperation, could see the way his pulse hammered in his throat, could feel the heat radiating off him, fever or fury or both. On 3, I whispered. 1, 2. I turned the key on 2. The collar sprang open with a click that echoed like a gunshot in the concrete chamber. Cale's scream shredded the air, pure agony as silver-burned flesh met oxygen for the first time in 6 years. His body convulsed, bones cracking like gunfire, muscles tearing and reforming. The shift hit him like a freight train, like a dam breaking, like 6 years of suppressed transformation demanding release all at once. But he didn't transform into one creature. He transformed into 3, all at once. His right arm became a bear's massive limb, muscles bunching and swelling until the sleeve of his shirt exploded into tatters. Claws like daggers extended from paws the size of dinner plates, each one capable of disemboweling with a casual swipe. His left leg twisted into a wolf's powerful haunch, fur erupting through shredding fabric in waves of silver gray. And his spine arched and something else emerged. Something with scales that gleamed like oil slicks in the fluorescent light. Something with ridges that looked almost reptilian but not quite. Something with eyes that were older than wolves or bears or anything that walked on 2 legs or 4. He was a nightmare. A contradiction. An impossibility made flesh. He was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Cale, I breathed, unable to look away from the magnificent horror of him. You're not cursed. You're extraordinary. His 3-form head wolf and bear and other turned toward me with movements that shouldn't have been coordinated but somehow were. And in those mismatched eyes, amber and black and something that shifted colors like aurora borealis, I saw understanding dawn. Nobody had ever called him extraordinary before. Nobody had ever looked at him with wonder instead of fear. And in that moment, in that basement that reeked of old suffering and new possibility, something shifted between us. Not trust, not yet, but the foundation for it. The first fragile thread of connection between 2 people the world had deemed unworthy. I'd spent my life being invisible. He'd spent his life being impossible. Maybe together, we could learn to be simply seen. Chapter 3. The 3 Forms. Cale's transformation didn't stabilize. That's what I learned in those first terrifying minutes after the collar came off. His body couldn't decide what it wanted to be, or maybe it wanted to be everything at once, and didn't understand why that wasn't possible. His wolf haunch would solidify, fur thick and muscles coiled with predatory grace, and then it would shimmer and start to become bare, bones lengthening, joints reconfiguring. Before that transformation completed, scales would ripple across the surface like oil on water, and that third thing, that impossible other, would try to emerge. It looked agonizing. Cale. I kept my voice low, steady, even though my heart was hammering hard enough to crack ribs. You need to breathe. Focus on breathing. A sound emerged from his throat, half growl, half scream, entirely pain. His human torso twisted at an angle that should have snapped his spine. One arm massive and furred, the other scaled and ending in talons that scraped against concrete like knives on stone. I can't. The words came out mangled, his jaw shifting between human and wolf mid-sentence. Too long. The silver. Kept it buried. Now it's all everything. He collapsed forward, chains rattling as his body seized. I lunged without thinking, catching his human shoulder before his face hit the concrete. His skin was burning hot, fever bright, and I could feel his muscles spasming under my hands. Listen to me. I gripped his shoulder tighter, willing him to focus. You've been suppressed for 6 years. Your body doesn't remember how to do this gradually, so don't try to control it. Let it cycle through. What? His amber eye, the only one still human, fixed on me with desperate confusion. Stop fighting it. I shifted my grip, supporting more of his weight as another convulsion racked through him. Let your body remember what it knows. Wolf, then bear, then the other. Let each form come fully, then release it. Your body will find its rhythm. That's not shifters don't. His protest cut off as his jaw extended into a wolf's muzzle, fangs erupting through gums that were already bleeding. You're not a normal shifter, I said simply. So stop trying to shift normally. For a moment, he went completely still. Then, slowly, deliberately, I felt his body stop fighting itself. The wolf came first. His form flowed like liquid, silver, bones and muscles rearranging with a sound like wind through trees. Within seconds, a massive gray wolf stood where the broken boy had been, easily, twice the size of any wolf I'd ever seen. With eyes that still held that too human awareness. He was magnificent, powerful, built for hunting and running and surviving. He threw back his head and howled. The sound echoed through the basement, through my bones, through 6 years of enforced silence. It was grief and rage, and joy and freedom all mixed together into something that made my eyes burn with tears I refused to shed. The wolf form held for maybe 30 seconds, then it began to shift again. The bear came next, enormous, grizzled, with claws that gouged furrows in the concrete floor. This form radiated raw power, the kind that could tear through trees, could fight anything, could protect or destroy with equal ease. He reared up on hind legs, and his head nearly touched the basement ceiling. Then he dropped to all fours, shook his massive head, and shifted again. The third form was harder to describe. It wasn't quite reptilian, though scales covered most of its surface, scales that shifted color from black to deep green to something that looked like starlight. It wasn't quite mammalian, though it had fur in patches along its spine and shoulders. It had 4 legs like a wolf or bear, but its spine was longer, more serpentine. Its head was somewhere between dragon and wolf, with eyes that were multifaceted like an insect's but warm like a mammal's. It was ancient. That was the only word that fit. It looked like something from before wolves and bears evolved, something primordial and powerful and utterly impossible. This form held the longest. The creature Cale turned those strange eyes on me, and I saw recognition there. Awareness. He took a step forward, and I held my ground even though every instinct screamed at me to run. He lowered his head until his snout was inches from my face. I could feel his breath hot and smelling of ozone and something wild. Could see each individual scale, each one etched with patterns too complex to be random. Then, he made a sound low and rumbling, and almost content, and shifted back to human. Cale collapsed into my arms, gasping, shaking, completely naked since his clothes had shredded during the transformations. I grabbed the ratty blanket from the corner, the only thing in this basement that looked like it was meant for comfort rather than restraint, and wrapped it around his shoulders. How do you feel? I asked. He laughed, a real laugh this time, not that horrible broken sound from before. Like I've been turned inside out and put back together wrong, but also. He looked up at me, and his amber eyes were bright with something I couldn't quite name. Better. Complete. For the first time in 6 years, I feel complete. The third form, I said carefully. What is it? His expression shuddered immediately, walls slamming back into place. The curse, the abomination, the thing that shouldn't exist. He pulled the blanket tighter around himself. Your grandmother spent 6 years trying to cut it out of me. Metaphorically and literally. She never succeeded. Because it's part of you, I said. Not a curse. Just part of who you are. You don't understand. He pushed himself to sitting, though his arms shook with the effort. Shifters have one animal form. One. It's tied to bloodline, to pack, to identity. Your wolf, or your bear, or your cougar, or your fox. You're not 3 things. You're definitely not 3 things where one of them is something that hasn't existed for thousands of years. What do you mean, hasn't existed? He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands, human hands, scarred and shaking. Your grandmother's research. It's all in that journal. But the summary is, I shouldn't be possible. That third form, it's from a bloodline that went extinct before recorded history. Before shifters organized into packs and councils and hierarchies, before we pretended to be civilized. You're saying you're some kind of throwback? Ancient genetics expressing randomly? I'm saying I'm proof that the council's precious bloodline purity is bullshit. He met my eyes with an intensity that made my breath catch. Shifters like to pretend we're evolved, refined, better than humans, but we're not. We're just animals with delusions of grandeur. And I'm what happens when those delusions crack. I sat down beside him on the cold concrete, my back against the wall. My grandmother wrote that you came to her when you were 13, that your pack rejected you. Rejected. He laughed bitterly. That's a polite word for it. They tied me to a post in the center of the pack grounds and held a trial. Accused me of being cursed, of bringing shame to the bloodline, of being evidence of my mother's infidelity with something unclean. His voice went flat, emotionless. My own mother stood there and didn't say a word in my defense. My father cast the first stone. Literally? Literally. He touched his ribs, and I saw the scar there, old, white, the kind that came from bones broken badly and healed wrong. They were going to beat me to death. Would have, except the council intervened, said I was too valuable to waste, that if I was some kind of genetic anomaly, I should be studied. So they gave you to my grandmother. Sold me, he corrected. Let's be accurate. They sold me to her for research purposes, signed documents and everything. I wasn't a child who needed help. I was a specimen that needed cataloging. The casual way he said it, the flatness in his voice was somehow worse than if he'd been screaming. This was the tone of someone who'd accepted their own dehumanization, who'd learned that pain was just a fact of existence, like breathing or bleeding. Cale. Don't. He cut me off, his amber eyes hard. Don't pity me. Don't apologize for things you didn't do. Don't try to make this better with words. You want to help? Then tell me the truth. Are you actually going to let me go? Or is this just a more comfortable cage? The question hung between us like a blade. I thought about the letter. The money. The warning that we had maybe a week before the council came looking. I thought about my grandmother's research journal, still upstairs, full of 6 years of documentation on how to control him, manage him, suppress him. I thought about my entire life spent being powerless, being nothing, being the defective daughter that even her own parents couldn't love. I'm going to let you go, I said. But I need you to do something for me first. His body tensed immediately. There it is, the catch. What do you want? Blood samples? Tissue samples? Should I shift for you while you take measurements? No. I held his gaze steadily. I need you to teach me how to survive. That stopped him. What? You heard my grandmother's letter. The council thinks you're dead, but they'll come checking eventually. And when they do, they'll find me. The broken granddaughter who inherited a cabin full of research on a dead specimen. I wrapped my arms around my knees. I've spent my whole life being invisible because I'm human in a shifter world. But now I'm connected to you. To this. I'm not invisible anymore. I'm a liability. So run, he said. Take the money and disappear. Change your name. Start over somewhere the council doesn't operate. Where? I asked. Where exactly is there that the council doesn't operate? They control everything. Every city, every pack, every territory. Even the human populations are monitored, because they need to keep the secret. There's nowhere to run where they can't find me. He opened his mouth, closed it. Because I was right, and he knew it. So teach me, I pressed. You've survived 6 years of torture. You know how to endure, how to resist, how to be strong when everything is trying to break you. I need that. If I'm going to survive what comes next, I need to learn from someone who already has. Cale stared at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, something shifted in his face. Not a smile, exactly, but something like respect. You're serious. Completely. You understand what you're asking? Survival isn't pretty. It's not about being brave or strong. It's about being willing to do whatever it takes. To lie, to hide, to hurt people if necessary. It's about becoming someone you might not recognize. I'm already someone I don't recognize, I said quietly. The Elena who came here this morning believed her grandmother was a good person. That woman is dead. I'm just trying to figure out who's left. He studied me for another long moment, and I could see him weighing something, calculating odds, measuring risks, deciding whether I was worth the investment of his knowledge. Finally, he nodded. Okay, but we do this my way. First rule. Stop thinking like prey. You've spent your whole life being human in a shifter world. That ends now. You're not helpless just because you can't shift. You're armed with something they don't have. What's that? Their underestimation. His amber eyes gleamed. They think you're weak, disposable, not worth noticing. That's not a disadvantage. That's a weapon, and I'm going to teach you how to use it. I felt something shift in my chest, fear and hope and determination all mixed together. When do we start? Now. He stood, the blanket falling away, completely unself-conscious about his nakedness. Because first, you need to understand what you're protecting. You need to see what your grandmother documented. You need to know exactly what the council was willing to do to control me. The journal. The journal, he confirmed. And then we're going to burn it. Every page, every note, every measurement, and observation, and theory. We're going to erase 6 years of research so thoroughly that nobody will ever be able to replicate what she did. And then? His smile was sharp as broken glass. Then we disappear, together. Because you're right, you can't survive alone. But neither can I. I've been alone in the dark for 6 years, and it almost broke me. I won't survive another 6 years of running and hiding by myself. So we become partners? We become pack, he corrected. Even if it's just a pack of 2, even if one of us can't shift. Pack means protection. Pack means loyalty. Pack means you don't abandon each other when things get hard. He held out his hand. I took it. His palm was calloused and scarred and warm, and his grip was strong enough to hurt but gentle enough to offer choice. This wasn't a rescue, wasn't salvation. It was a bargain between 2 broken people who decided that broken together was better than whole and alone. Elena, he said seriously, if we do this, there's no going back. The council will hunt us. Your old life is over. You understand that? I understand. And you still want to do this? I thought about my apartment in the city, my job cataloging books at a library where shifters came to study, and humans came to hide. My quiet, small, invisible life. I thought about how I'd spent 32 years being nothing, being nobody, being so carefully inoffensive that maybe, just maybe, the world would let me exist. That woman was dead. Yes, I said. I want to do this. Cale's smile was the first genuine one I'd seen from him, fierce and wild and full of promise. Good. Then let's go read about all the ways your grandmother tried to break me. And then let's make sure nobody ever gets the chance to try again. We climbed the basement stairs together, him wrapped in a blanket, me carrying 6 years of guilt by association. Behind us, the silver collar lay discarded on the concrete floor, still stained with his blood. Neither of us looked back. Chapter 4. The Journal of Horrors. The journal sat on the kitchen table like a coiled snake. I'd made tea while Cale found clothes in the bedroom, old things of my grandmother's, that hung loose on his lean frame but were better than the blanket. The act of boiling water, of measuring tea leaves, of performing small domestic rituals felt absurd given what we were about to do. But my hands needed something to do that wasn't shaking. Cale emerged, wearing gray sweatpants and a black long-sleeve shirt that emphasized just how thin he was. 6 years of whatever minimal nutrition my grandmother had provided had left him lean to the point of gaunt, all angles and hollows. But the way he moved, that was pure predator, controlled, aware, every step deliberate, every muscle coiled and ready. He saw the tea and something flickered across his face. She used to bring me tea, after what? After the experiments, after I'd screamed myself hoarse, after I'd begged and pleaded and finally gone quiet. He sat down across from me, his amber eyes distant. She'd bring tea and talk to me like we were having a normal conversation, like she hadn't just spent 3 hours testing how much electricity a shifter body could take before the heart stopped. She'd ask me about my favorite books, about what I wanted to be when I grew up. My stomach clenched. Cale, it's fine. He pulled the journal toward him, his scarred fingers tracing the worn leather cover. I just want you to understand who she was. Not the grandmother who taught you to read, the scientist who treated me like a puzzle to solve. They were the same person. People are complicated like that. He was right, and I hated it. Hated that I couldn't separate the woman who'd shown me kindness from the monster who'd tortured a child. Hated that both versions were real. Both versions existed. Both versions had shaped the world I was living in now. Should we? I gestured at the journal. Yes. He opened it to the first page, and I saw my grandmother's handwriting, the same precise script from the letter, but younger somehow, less certain. Let's see what 6 years of my life looked like from her perspective. Entry 1. Day 1. Subject arrived today. Male, 13 years old, severely malnourished and dehydrated. Multiple contusions and lacerations consistent with physical assault. Right orbital bone fractured. 3 broken ribs. Pack elders provided documentation of his curse, the ability to shift into 3 distinct forms rather than 1. Initial observation. Subject is terrified but attempting to maintain composure. Responds to questions with single-word answers. Will not make eye contact. Flinches at sudden movements. Applied silver collar to prevent unsupervised shifting. Subject screened for approximately 45 minutes before exhaustion set in. This is necessary for both his safety and mine, until I understand the extent of his abilities. Note: Council Representative Thorne emphasized that subject is considered property, not patient. All standard ethical protocols are waived. This makes me uncomfortable, but I understand the reasoning. If he truly is an evolutionary throwback, the scientific value is immeasurable. Subject's name is Cale. He asked me not to forget that. I promised I wouldn't. Cale's voice was flat as he read aloud, but I could see his hands trembling slightly. She kept that promise, at least. Even at the end, she never forgot my name. That doesn't make it better. No, he agreed. It makes it worse. She saw me as human enough to have a name but not human enough to have rights. He turned the page. Entry 15. Day 47. First successful induced transformation today. Subject resisted for 43 minutes before the pain threshold was exceeded, and the shift began. Observations. 1. Wolf form manifests first, appearing to be the default or most comfortable state. 2. Transition to bear form requires significant effort and causes visible distress. 3. Third form, tentatively classified as primordial shifter, based on genetic markers, only manifests under extreme duress. The third form is remarkable. Scales suggest reptilian ancestry, but the skeletal structure is mammalian. Musculature indicates strength far exceeding either wolf or bear forms. Subject appears to have limited control in this state, more instinct-driven than the others. After transformation sequence completed, subject returned to human form and immediately vomited. Applied sedation. Will attempt again tomorrow with modifications to the stimulus protocol. Personal note: Cale called me a monster today. He's not wrong, but if studying one monster can protect thousands of innocents from future anomalies, isn't that a worthwhile trade? Stimulus protocol, I repeated, my voice hollow. She means torture. She means she tortured you until you shifted so she could watch. Cale nodded, turning pages faster now, as if he couldn't bear to linger on any single entry. Keep reading. It gets worse. Entry 89, day 156. Major breakthrough today. Subject's third form is not a mutation or curse, it's an ancestral reversion. DNA analysis confirms genetic markers from the Primus bloodline, believed extinct for over 3,000 years. The Primus were the original shifters before pack hierarchies, before the council, before we organized ourselves into neat categories. They were apex predators capable of multiple forms, each suited to different hunting styles and environments. The bloodline was systematically eliminated during the Great Purge, because they refused to submit to council authority. Subject Cale is living proof that Primus genetics survived. This has staggering implications. Council's claims of bloodline purity are false too. Any shifter could potentially carry dormant Primus markers 3. The council's entire power structure is built on a lie. I've informed Council Representative Thorne of these findings. His response was troubling. He ordered me to continue research, but emphasized that findings must remain classified. When I asked why, he said, because if people knew what he represents, they'd realize the council has been lying for 3 millennia. That tends to cause revolutions. I should refuse, should expose this. But I'm too deep now. And if I stop, they'll just find someone else. Someone who won't keep Cale's name. Someone who won't feel guilty. She knew, Cale said softly. She knew I wasn't cursed, knew the council was lying. And she kept going anyway, because she was afraid, I said. She was a coward who chose complicity over courage. He looked at me with something like gratitude. Thank you for not making excuses for her. We kept reading. The entries became more clinical as months turned into years. Lists of experiments, measurements, observations on pain tolerance, healing rates, how long he could maintain each form, what happened when forms were forced to shift mid-transformation. There were sketches, detailed anatomical drawings of each form, marked with notes about musculature and bone structure. There were also photographs. I wish there hadn't been photographs. They showed Cale at different ages, 13, 14, 15, strapped to examination tables, suspended in restraints, unconscious or screaming or staring at the camera with empty eyes. In some photos, he was mid-transformation, his body caught between human and animal in ways that looked agonizing. In others, he was covered in electrodes, in tubes, in instruments I didn't recognize and didn't want to understand. One photograph showed him at maybe 16, wolf form, lying motionless on the concrete floor. The caption read, "Testing recovery time after sustained silver exposure. Subject achieved consciousness after 4 hours." Note: whimpering continued throughout recovery period. Cale closed the journal abruptly. "I can't." His voice was rough. "I remember that day, every second of it. I don't need to see it documented like a science fair project. I'm sorry." "Stop apologizing." He stood suddenly, the chair scraping against the floor. "You didn't do this. She did. And she's dead. So I can't even have the satisfaction of making her understand what she took from me." He paced to the window, his shoulders rigid. Outside, the forest was darkening as evening approached. We'd been reading for hours, and the light had shifted from afternoon gold to twilight gray. "What did she take from you?" I asked quietly. "I know that's a stupid question, but I need to understand. Not the physical things. The other things." He was silent for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, trust. She took my ability to trust. Every time someone shows me kindness now, I wait for the knife. Every time someone says they want to help, I hear her voice saying the same thing before she strapped me down. "Is that why you laughed when I said I'd help you?" "Yes." He pressed his forehead against the window glass. "Because I knew you were lying. Everyone lies. It's safer to assume that than to hope and be disappointed. I wasn't lying. I know." He turned to look at me, and his amber eyes were bright with unshed tears he was too proud to let fall. "That's what terrifies me. That maybe you're telling the truth. That maybe I could trust you. Because if I trust you and you betray me, I don't think I'll survive it." I barely survived her. The vulnerability in his voice cracked something open in my chest. This wasn't the feral creature from the basement, or the calculating survivor who'd bargained for freedom. This was just a boy 19 years old, maybe 20, who'd been hurt so badly that even hope felt dangerous. "Then don't trust me yet," I said. "Just stay. See what happens. You don't have to trust me to work with me." "That's not how pack works," he said. "Pack requires trust. Requires knowing someone will protect you even when it's hard. Then we'll build a new kind of pack." I stood, moving to join him by the window. One where trust is earned slowly, where it's okay to be afraid, where we don't pretend to be strong when we're barely holding together. He studied me for a long moment. "You really think we can do that? Create something different?" "I think we don't have a choice." I gestured at the journal. "That research proves the council has been lying for thousands of years. Proves their entire hierarchy is built on suppressing people like you. If they find out we have that information, they'll kill us," he finished, quietly, efficiently. "And nobody will ever know we existed. So we make sure they don't find out." "How?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "We can't hide forever. You said it yourself. The council controls everything. Every territory, every pack, every human population center. Where exactly do we go that they won't eventually find us?" I looked down at the journal, at 6 years of documentation that proved the council's greatest secret. An idea began to form, reckless and desperate, and possibly brilliant. "We don't hide," I said slowly. "We give them exactly what they expect." "What do you mean?" "Think about it. Right now, they think you're dead. They think my grandmother's research died with her. They have no reason to look for either of us." I met his eyes. "But if they do come looking, what do they expect to find? A human woman who inherited a cabin and doesn't know anything." "Exactly." I picked up the journal, feeling its weight. "So that's what they find. A grieving granddaughter who's clearing out her grandmother's things. Who's scared and confused and completely non-threatening. And what about me?" "You stay dead," I said. "At least officially. We create a new identity for you. Human identity, no shifter records, no pack affiliation, nothing that connects you to Cale. The council doesn't monitor humans as closely. We could hide you in plain sight." He was quiet, considering. "That could work, for a while, but eventually we find others." I interrupted. "We can't be the only ones. There have to be other shifters who don't fit the council's neat categories. Other people they've hurt or suppressed or deemed defective. We find them. We build something." "You're talking about revolution," he said softly. "I'm talking about survival. Revolution is just what it looks like when enough people decide to survive together." Cale stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "You're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Can't it be both?" That surprised a real laugh out of him, short and sharp but genuine. "Yes, I suppose it can be both." He walked back to the table, picked up the journal, and held it out to me. "There are more pages. Do you want to keep reading? Or should we move forward with your insane plan?" I looked at the journal, at the photographs still visible between pages, at the documentation of 6 years of systematic cruelty. Part of me wanted to read every word, to understand exactly what my grandmother had done, to catalog every sin so I could properly mourn the person I'd thought she was. But Cale was right. We didn't have time for mourning. "We burn it," I said. "We take what we need to know the information about your bloodline, about the Primus, and we burn the rest. They don't get to have a record of your pain. They don't get to study it or learn from it or use it to hurt others. And the money? We use it to disappear, to build new identities, to create a life where you're not a specimen and I'm not invisible." Cale nodded slowly. "Okay, but first, I need you to understand something." He opened the journal to a page near the end and turned it so I could see. Entry 2187. Day 2187. 6 years today. Subject: Cale turned 19 last month, though he doesn't know I remembered. I bought him a book fantasy novel about a world where magic is real and monsters are heroes. Left it outside his cell door without comment. He hasn't opened it. I don't blame him. I'm dying. Cancer. The irony isn't lost on me. I've spent 6 years studying extraordinary biology while my own ordinary body betrays me. 6 months, maybe less. I've told the council that Cale died. Told them the experiments finally exceeded his body's capacity to heal. They believed me because they wanted to believe me. Because admitting I failed means admitting they wasted 6 years and considerable resources on nothing. Truth is, I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't strap him down one more time. Couldn't watch those amber eyes go distant while I hurt him in the name of science. I'm leaving him to Elena because she's the only person I know who might understand what it's like to be deemed worthless by the world. Who might see him as I should have seen him from the beginning. As a person, not a project. If there's any justice in the universe, she'll be brave enough to do what I couldn't. She'll set him free. I'm sorry, Cale. I'm so desperately sorry. But sorry doesn't undo 6 years. Doesn't erase scars. Doesn't give you back the childhood I stole. All I can do is give you a chance. And hope it's enough. She was sorry, Cale said quietly. At the end, does that matter? I thought about it. Really thought about it. No. I said, finally. Sorry doesn't undo harm. Doesn't erase trauma. She was still a coward, who waited until she was dying to do the right thing. Good. He closed the journal with finality. I needed to hear you say that. Needed to know you wouldn't romanticize her just because she's dead. I won't. I met his eyes. But I will honor the one good thing she did. She gave us a chance. Let's not waste it. Cale held out his hand again. The same gesture from the basement, but different now. Weighted with understanding. With the beginning of something that might eventually become trust. I took it. Partners, he said. Pack, I corrected. His smile was small but real. Pack of 2. Against the world. Against the council, I amended. Same thing. We gathered the journal, the photographs, all the documentation of 6 years of horrors. Carried them outside, where the evening had deepened into true darkness. Cale built a fire in the clearing behind the cabin. Professional, efficient, the kind of fire that burns hot and leaves nothing but ash. We fed the journal to the flames, page by page. Watched my grandmother's precise handwriting curl and blacken and disappear. Watched the photographs of Cale's suffering become smoke and memory. It took hours. The journal was thick, and we burned it slowly, making sure every page was completely destroyed. As we worked, Cale told me stories not about the torture, but about the moments in between, the times he'd used his mind to escape his body, the elaborate fantasy worlds he'd built in his head, the way he'd categorized every sound in the basement so he'd know when my grandmother was coming. I counted her footsteps, he said, feeding another page to the fire. She always took exactly 37 steps from the top of the stairs to my cell. On day 37, because I was a stupid kid who believed in signs, I asked her why. What did she say? She said 37 was a prime number, indivisible except by itself and 1, like I was. He watched the page burn. I thought it was profound at the time. Now I realize she was just really good at manipulation. She was a monster who could quote poetry, I said. The worst kind. Yes. He fed the last page to the flames, and we watched it burn. Yes, she was. When the fire finally died down to embers, we stood there in the darkness, breathing in smoke and ash and the possibility of freedom. What now? Cale asked. Now we sleep, I said. Tomorrow, we start building new lives. But tonight, we rest. I don't know if I remember how to rest, he admitted. Then we'll learn together. We went back inside. The cabin felt different now, lighter somehow, despite the darkness. As if burning the journal had exorcised something. Cale took the bedroom, I insisted. He'd spent 6 years on concrete floors. He deserved a bed. I made a nest of blankets on the couch, surprisingly comfortable. As I was drifting off, I heard his voice from the bedroom. Elena? Yeah? Thank you. For not leaving me in the dark. Thank you for trusting me enough to try. Silence. Then, I'm not sure I do yet. Trust you, I mean. I know, I said. But you're still here. That's enough for now. More silence. Then, So quiet I almost missed it. Yeah, it is. I fell asleep to the sound of him breathing steady, alive, free. Tomorrow would bring complications, questions. The hard work of building new identities and new lives and figuring out how two broken people could create something whole. But tonight, we'd both survived. And sometimes, survival is enough. Subscribe if you believe Cale deserved better than 6 years in chains, because stories like his need witnesses who refuse to look away. Drop a comment below telling me, what would you do if you inherited that cabin? Would you run, or would you fight? Your answer might surprise you. Chapter 5. Building New Skins. I woke to the smell of coffee, and the sound of drawers being opened and closed with careful precision. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Forgot about the cabin, the basement, the journal we'd burned. Then reality crashed back in waves. Grandmother, monster, Cale, pack, revolution. I sat up on the couch, my neck protesting the awkward angle I'd slept at. Morning light filtered through the cabin windows, turning the dust motes into tiny galaxies. It should have been peaceful. Instead, it felt like the calm before a storm. Cale emerged from the bedroom wearing the same clothes from yesterday, his hair wet from a shower. He looked different. Not better, exactly. Still too thin, still carrying 6 years of trauma in the tight set of his shoulders, but more present. More here. You found the coffee, I said, my voice rough with sleep. I found a lot of things. He gestured to the kitchen table, now covered with items I hadn't noticed yesterday. Folders, documents, what looked like multiple passports. Your grandmother was thorough, almost obsessively so. I moved to the table, picking up one of the passports. It showed a young man with dark hair and blue eyes, not Cale's amber. The name read David Morrison, Canadian citizen, born in Vancouver, 23 years old. She made these? I asked. She made 5 of them. Different names, different nationalities, different ages. All for me, I think. He spread them out like playing cards. There's also cash. A lot of cash. More than the 50,000 she mentioned in the letter. How much more? Try 200,000. He pointed to a canvas bag on the counter. Plus credit cards in various names, a burner phone with prepaid international minutes, and he held up a small black device that looked like a USB drive. Encrypted files. I don't know what's on it yet. Could be research backups. Could be something else. I sank into a chair, overwhelmed. She really did plan for this. For you to escape. Or she planned to run herself and didn't get the chance. Cale's voice was neutral, carefully controlled. These documents are old. Look at the issue dates. She's been preparing this for at least 3 years. He was right. The passports were dated and worn, the kind of authentic aging that came from careful handling over time. My grandmother had been planning an escape, whether for herself or for Cale, for years before her death. Why didn't she do it sooner? I wondered aloud. If she wanted to free you. Why wait? Because she was a coward, Cale said simply. Because wanting to do the right thing isn't the same as being brave enough to do it. She probably told herself she'd do it tomorrow, then next month, then next year. Until she ran out of time. The bitterness in his voice was tempered with something else now. Not quite forgiveness, but maybe understanding. The recognition that people are complicated. That they can be both monster and victim of their own fear. We should go through everything, I said, pulling another folder toward me. Figure out what we have, what we need, what identities will work. Already started. Cale pulled out a legal pad covered in his neat handwriting. Here's what I'm thinking. We can't both disappear completely. You need to maintain some presence here, deal with the estate, close the cabin properly. Otherwise, the council might get suspicious about why you vanished right after inheriting. So, I stay visible. For a while, maybe a week, like your grandmother suggested. Long enough to seem like you're grieving, clearing things out, handling normal inheritance stuff. Meanwhile, I become, he picked up the Canadian passport. David Morrison, your grandmother's research assistant who's helping you sort through her files. Research assistant? I raised an eyebrow. You think the council will buy that? Why wouldn't they? Your grandmother was a respected scientist. Having an assistant makes sense. And David Morrison has a complete backstory. He pulled out another document, what looked like a university transcript. Master's degree in biology from McGill. Graduated 3 years ago. Worked as a lab tech before your grandmother hired him off the books. She really did think of everything. She had 6 years and terminal cancer to plan, Cale said. Lots of time to be thorough when you're dying slowly. I studied the passport photo again. You don't look much like him. The eyes are different. The face shape. Contact lenses for the eyes. I can shift my features slightly without full transformation, just enough to alter bone structure a bit. Won't stand up to serious scrutiny, but it should work for casual encounters. He demonstrated, and I watched in fascination as his face subtly rearranged itself. Nothing dramatic, just small adjustments that made him look softer, more human, less predatory. That's incredible. I breathed. That's survival. He shifted back to his normal features. I learned it in the basement. Your grandmother would test me, show me pictures of different faces, see if I could mimic them. She wanted to know if the Primus could shapeshift into specific individuals, not just general forms. Could you? Only approximately. I could get close, maybe 60–70% accurate. Good enough to fool someone who doesn't know the person well. Not good enough to fool family or friends. He set the passport down. It's enough for David Morrison. Nobody knows him well enough to notice small discrepancies. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything. My grandmother had been nothing if not prepared. In addition to the passports and cash, there were credit card statements showing David Morrison had been making regular purchases for the past year. Coffee shops, bookstores, gas stations, creating a paper trail. Rental agreements for a storage unit in Portland under another false name, paid up for the next 5 years. Medical records for Kyle showing he'd died 6 months ago from complications during an experiment. Official, signed by my grandmother, complete with forged council authorization stamps. A second encrypted drive labeled insurance. 3 burner phones. With different numbers. A detailed map of North America with certain locations marked in red. What are these? I pointed to the red marks. They clustered around major cities: Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Denver, Chicago, Toronto. Cale studied the map. Safe houses, maybe? Or council facilities she wanted to avoid? Or both? I noticed that several marks had dates written next to them in tiny script. Look, these dates are recent. Within the last 6 months. He leaned closer. Seattle, March 15. Portland, April 2. San Francisco, April 18. His eyes widened. These aren't safe houses. These are incidents. What kind of incidents? The kind that get reported as accidents or disappearances but are actually council cleanup operations. His voice went tight. I heard your grandmother talking about them sometimes. When she thought I was unconscious, or too drugged to understand. The council has a problem: too many shifters are being born who don't fit the standard categories. Too many anomalies like me. And they're eliminating them, quietly, efficiently, making it look natural. He traced a line between the cities. This isn't random. This is systematic. She was tracking it. I felt cold despite the morning warmth. Why would she track it if she was part of the system? Maybe she wasn't as complicit as we thought. Cale picked up the second encrypted drive, the one labeled insurance. Maybe she was documenting their crimes, building evidence. For what purpose? Blackmail. Protection. Or, he met my eyes. Maybe she was planning to expose them. Before the cancer got too bad, before she ran out of time, we stared at each other, the implications settling like stones. We need to see what's on that drive, I said. Not here. Cale's voice was sharp with sudden urgency. If it's what I think it is, if it's documentation of council operations, then opening it could trigger alerts. They might have ways to track when files are accessed. So where? Somewhere public. Somewhere with lots of digital traffic that would mask our activity. He thought for a moment. Internet cafe in a big city. We access it, download everything to another device, then destroy the original drive. That's paranoid. That's survival, he corrected. Your grandmother didn't label it insurance for nothing. That means it's valuable enough to protect her. Which means it's dangerous enough to get us killed. He was right. I hated that he was right. Hated that we had to think this way. But 6 years in a basement had taught him lessons I'd never had to learn. Okay, I said. So we have a plan. I stay here for a week, play the grieving granddaughter. You become David Morrison. We maintain normal appearances while we prepare to disappear. Then we head to Portland, access the drive in a public place, and figure out what my grandmother knew. And after that, we find the others. I pointed to the map. If the council is systematically eliminating anomalies, there have to be others who escaped, others who are hiding. We find them. And do what? Cale's voice carried a challenge. Form some kind of underground resistance? Fight the council with what good intentions and $200,000? We start with information, I said. Your grandmother spent 6 years documenting everything about you. About the Primus bloodline. About how the council has been lying for 3,000 years. That's power. That's leverage. That's also treason. They'll kill us just for possessing it. They'll kill us anyway if they find out you're alive. I met his gaze steadily. At least this way, we're not just running. We're building something. Cale was quiet for a long moment, his amber eyes searching my face for something. Finally, he nodded. Okay. But we do this smart. We don't trust anyone until we're absolutely certain. We don't take unnecessary risks. And if when this goes wrong, we prioritize survival over heroics. Agreed. I'm serious, Elena. He leaned forward, intensity radiating off him. You have this idea that we're going to save people, build something better. That's noble. But noble gets you killed. Practical keeps you alive. Then we'll be practical and noble, I said. We'll survive first. Change the world second. That earned me a small smile. You're either incredibly naive or incredibly stubborn. Can it be both? He laughed, that same surprised sound from yesterday, like he'd forgotten he could. Yes. I suppose it can be both. We spent the rest of the morning organizing. Cale practiced being David Morrison, adjusting his features, rehearsing his backstory, even changing the way he held himself. The transformation was remarkable. David Morrison was softer than Cale, more human, more forgettable. The kind of person you'd pass on the street and never remember. How do I seem? He asked, standing in the middle of the cabin with David's posture slightly slouched, hands in pockets, head tilted at an angle that suggested curiosity rather than constant vigilance. Like a completely different person, I admitted. It's unsettling. Good. Unsettling means effective. He shifted back to himself. Your turn. My turn for what? To build a new skin. He gestured at me. You said you've spent your life being invisible. Now you need to be visible in a specific way. Grieving granddaughter who doesn't know anything, remember? I can play that role. Can you? He circled me slowly, assessing. Because right now, you look like someone who's planning revolution. Your shoulders are back. Your eyes are sharp. You're standing like you have nothing to lose. He was right. Something had shifted in me since yesterday. The Elena who'd driven here careful, quiet, perpetually apologetic felt like a stranger now. So how do I fix it? You don't. Cale stopped in front of me. You just adjust. Shoulders slightly forward, like you're carrying weight. Eyes down more often, like you're uncomfortable with attention. Move slower, like you're tired. Grief makes people small. Make yourself small. I tried it. Rounded my shoulders, dropped my gaze, let my body language convey exhaustion and confusion. Better, Cale said. But you need to believe it. You can't just perform grief, you need to feel it. And you do feel it, right? Your grandmother lied to you. Betrayed everything you thought you knew about her. That's real grief. He was right. Beneath the anger and determination, there was grief, raw and aching and real. My grandmother had been my only family who'd shown me kindness, and now I knew that kindness had been built on a foundation of cruelty to someone else. I let myself feel it, the loss, the betrayal, the confusion. Let it show in my posture, in my expression. There, Cale said softly. That's real. That's what they'll believe. We practiced for hours, Him being David, polite, helpful, slightly awkward research assistant. Me being Elena, grieving, overwhelmed, completely non-threatening. We rehearsed conversations, anticipated questions, built our cover stories until they felt like truth. By afternoon, we were exhausted but ready. Tomorrow, Cale said, we drive into town. You need to be seen making arrangements dealing with the estate. Maybe talking to a lawyer about selling the cabin eventually. I'll stay in the background. Just another person helping you through a hard time. And if we run into other shifters? We won't. This area is pretty isolated, that's why your grandmother chose it. But if we do, I'll know. He tapped his nose. I can smell them. And more importantly, I can smell if they recognize what I am. What about the council? Will they send someone to check on me? Probably not immediately. You're human, invisible to them. But eventually, yes. Someone will come asking questions about your grandmother's research, her files, whether she left anything important. He met my eyes. When they do, you need to be the most boring, unhelpful person they've ever met. Confused, sad, completely clueless about her work. I can do that. I know you can. He smiled, a real smile this time, warm and almost trusting. You've been underestimated your whole life. Now we use that. As evening approached, we made dinner together, canned soup and stale crackers, all that was left in the cabin's sparse supplies. It wasn't much, but eating together felt significant somehow, like we were establishing rituals, building the foundation of our two-person pack. Can I ask you something? I said as we ate. Yes. What's the first thing you want to do? When we're safe, when we've built new lives, what's the first thing you want? Cale was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I want to run. Not from something, just to run. To shift into wolf form and run through a forest where nobody's chasing me, nobody's studying me. To run until my lungs burn and my legs ache, and I'm so tired I can't think about anything except breathing. The longing in his voice made my chest tight. We'll make that happen, I promised. However long it takes, we'll find you a place where you can run. What about you? He asked. What do you want? I thought about it. Really thought about it. I want to matter, I said finally. Not to everyone. Just to someone. I want to exist in a way that leaves a mark. Even if it's small. You already matter, Cale said quietly. You matter to me. The words hung between us, simple, honest, devastating in their sincerity. You barely know me, I managed. I know you freed me when you could have run. I know you burned 6 years of research that could have made you valuable to the council. I know you're planning to risk everything to help people you've never met. He held my gaze. That's enough to matter. I had to look away, overwhelmed by the weight of being seen, of being valued, of mattering to someone who'd learned that mattering usually meant pain. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me yet. We haven't survived the week. But we will. Yes, he agreed. We will. That night, I lay on the couch, listening to the sounds of the cabin settling. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, maintaining our cover, navigating town, pretending to be people we weren't. But tonight, we were just two people who'd chosen each other. Two broken pieces that didn't quite fit but were determined to try anyway. From the bedroom, I heard Cale's breathing slow into sleep. Not the unconsciousness of exhaustion or drugs, but actual rest. The kind that comes from feeling maybe for the first time in 6 years safe enough to let go. I smiled in the darkness and let myself sleep too. Tomorrow, we'd start building new skins. Tonight, we could just be ourselves. Chapter 6. The Town and the Watchers. The town of Millbrook was exactly the kind of place people drove through without remembering. One main street lined with practical businesses, a hardware store, a diner, a post office that doubled as a general store. Houses scattered on the outskirts like afterthoughts, population, maybe 300. Most of them human laborers who worked the lumber mills or seasonal farming operations that fed the larger shifter territories. It was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone else's business but pretended they didn't. Where strangers were noticed but not necessarily welcomed. Where people minded their own affairs because prying could get you hurt in a world where the powerful had claws. Perfect for our purposes. I drove us in the next morning. Cale, Now David Morrison, sitting in the passenger seat with the careful posture of someone trying to be helpful but not intrusive. He'd shifted his features just slightly, softened the predatory edges that marked him as dangerous. With contact lenses turning his amber eyes blue and clothes that hung loose on his thin frame, he looked exactly like what we were claiming. A research assistant helping his late employer's granddaughter settle affairs. "Remember," he said quietly as we approached the town limits, "you're exhausted and overwhelmed. I'm polite but forgettable. We're not trying to make friends, just establishing presence." "I know." My hands were steady on the wheel even though my heart was racing. This was the first test of our cover. The first time we'd be seen together by people who might report back to the council. "Elena." His voice pulled my attention. "Breathe. You've got this." I did breathe. Let the grief I'd been holding settle into my shoulders, my expression. Let myself become the woman who'd just lost the only family member who'd ever shown her kindness, who was struggling with practical matters while dealing with emotional devastation. It wasn't entirely acting. We parked in front of Morrison & Sons Legal Services, a small office with peeling paint and a window display that hadn't been updated since the 90s. According to the phone call I'd made that morning, James Morrison, no relation to David, ironically, was the only lawyer in town and handled most estate matters for the region. "Ready?" Cale asked. "Ready." The office interior matched the exterior, functional but dated. Wood paneling, outdated carpet, filing cabinets that looked like they'd survived multiple decades. Behind a desk sat a man in his 60s, human, with kind eyes and the slight stoop that came from years of bending over paperwork. "Miss Winters?" He stood, extending a hand. "James Morrison. I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you." I shook his hand, keeping my grip soft, uncertain. "This is David Morrison. He was my grandmother's research assistant. He's been helping me sort through her things." "Morrison, eh?" James smiled at Cale. "Common enough name, but always makes me wonder if we've got some distant relation." "You from around here?" "Vancouver originally," Cale said easily, his accent subtly Canadian now. "Moved around a lot for work." "Your grandmother, Miss Winters Sr., she hired me about a year ago. I've been helping catalog her research materials." "Research." James settled back into his chair, gesturing for us to sit. Miriam was quite the scientist from what I understand, though she kept to herself mostly. We'd see her maybe once, twice a year when she'd come into town for supplies. She valued her privacy, I said, and let my voice catch slightly. "I wish I'd visited more. Before. Can't change the past, dear." James pulled out a file. "Now, let's talk about what we can do going forward. Your grandmother's estate is straightforward. The cabin and surrounding 5 acres are yours free and clear. No mortgage, taxes paid up for the next 2 years. There are also several bank accounts in her name." He slid papers across the desk. I scanned them, my stomach dropping at the numbers. 3 different accounts, each containing over $50,000. Combined with the cash in the cabin, my grandmother had accumulated serious money. "I didn't realize she had this much," I said truthfully. "Your grandmother was very careful with finances, never spent more than necessary." James tapped the papers. "The accounts transfer to you automatically as named beneficiary. I can help you consolidate them, or set up new accounts if you prefer." Yes. Thank you. I need to figure out what to do with the cabin first." "Selling?" He pulled out another form. "I can recommend a real estate agent, though I'll be honest, property out there doesn't move fast. Remote location, limited access. Might take months, maybe a year to find a buyer." "Actually," Cale interjected smoothly, "we were thinking Miss Winters might keep it for a while. Her grandmother had years of research materials that need to be properly cataloged before any decisions are made about the property. I'm willing to stay on temporarily to help with that process." James looked between us, his expression neutral but assessing. I could see him making calculations, young woman, young man, remote cabin, drawing conclusions. "Of course," he said slowly. "That makes sense. Research materials should be handled properly. You'll be staying at the cabin then?" "For a week or 2, I said quickly. "Just until we can organize everything. Then David will head back to his regular position, and I'll decide about the property." Sounds reasonable. James made notes on a legal pad. You'll want to update the utilities into your name, contact the insurance company, things like that. I can provide a list of necessary contacts. We spent the next hour handling administrative details. James was thorough and professional, and if he had suspicions about our relationship or our plans, he kept them to himself. By the time we left, I had a folder full of documents and a growing sense that we'd cleared the first hurdle. Coffee, Cale suggested as we stepped back onto the main street. We should be seen acting normal. Plus, we can get a feel for the town. The diner Rosie's Place, according to the faded sign, was exactly what you'd expect. Red vinyl booths, checkered floor, a counter with rotating pies under glass domes, half a dozen customers scattered throughout, mostly humans, though I caught the distinctive scent markers that said at least 2 were shifters. Cale smelled them too. I saw his nostrils flare slightly before he schooled his expression back to David's pleasant neutrality. We took a booth near the back, ordered coffee and pie from a waitress who looked like she'd been working there since the diner opened. As we waited, I studied the other customers as discreetly as possible. The 2 shifters sat at the counter, middle-aged men in work clothes, probably lumber mill employees. One was definitely Wolf. I could tell by the way he held himself, the pack hierarchy posture that even in human form marked dominance or submission. The other was harder to read, Bear maybe, or something less common. They hadn't paid us much attention when we entered, but I noticed the wolf's head tilt slightly in our direction, scenting the air. Assessing. They know, I murmured to Cale. They know I'm shifter, he corrected quietly. But they're reading me as submissive, someone who doesn't want trouble, which is exactly right for David Morrison. Quote, "What about me? You're human. They're not interested." He said it matter-of-factly, without judgment, but it still stung. A reminder that in the shifter world, I didn't register as a threat, or even a person worth noting. Our coffee arrived. And with it, complications. The waitress, her name tag read Rosie, making me wonder if she owned the place, set down our cups with the kind of smile that said she was sizing us up for gossip potential. "You two passing through?" she asked, her tone friendly but probing. "Sort of," I said. "I inherited my grandmother's cabin. We're just in town to handle estate matters." "Oh, you must be Miriam Winter's granddaughter." Rosie's expression shifted to sympathetic. "Heard she passed." "I'm so sorry, honey. She was a private lady, but always polite when she came through. Thank you." I let my voice waver appropriately. "It's been difficult. I can imagine. And you've got your boyfriend here to help. That's good." She smiled at Cale with the kind of maternal approval that made assumptions about our relationship. "Research assistant," Cale corrected gently. "But yes, I'm happy to help however I can." "Well, that's sweet." Rosie patted my shoulder. "You two need anything while you're in town, you just ask. We look after our own around here." She left to handle other customers, but her comment lingered. "We look after our own." A statement that sounded welcoming but carried an undertone of warning. We know who belongs and who doesn't. We're watching. "This is a company town," Cale said quietly once she was out of earshot. "See the way everyone's dressed? Same work clothes, same brands. They all work for the same employer. The lumber mill? Or the pack that owns the lumber mill?" He took a sip of coffee, his eyes tracking the wolf at the counter. Small towns in shifter territory usually have one pack that controls everything. Employment, housing, who stays and who goes. Everyone here answers to someone. Should we be worried? Not yet. We're not threatening. We're just settling in a state. As long as we keep our heads down, finish quickly, and leave without causing problems, they'll leave us alone. And if they don't? His smile was sharp enough to cut. Then we remind them why underestimating people is dangerous. We finished our coffee and pie, which was actually excellent, and walked out into afternoon sunlight. The main street looked even more depressing, in full daylight. Peeling paint, cracked sidewalks, the general air of a place that was surviving rather than thriving. "We should get supplies," I said. "Food, cleaning supplies for the cabin. Make it look like we're settling in for normal reasons." Good thinking. The general store was attached to the post office, a cramped space packed with everything from canned goods to hardware supplies. An elderly woman ran the counter, human, with the kind of sharp eyes that said she missed nothing. We gathered supplies, enough food for a week, basic cleaning materials, batteries, a first aid kit. As I paid, the woman studied us with unconcealed curiosity. "Staying at the old Winters place?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." I kept my tone respectful, deferential, just for a little while. Miriam was a good customer. Ordered special supplies sometimes, scientific equipment, specialty chemicals, always paid cash. She bagged our items with efficient movements. "You planning to continue her work?" The question felt loaded. Too specific. Too interested. "No, ma'am," Cale answered before I could. "Just cataloging her research materials for archival purposes. Miss Winters isn't a scientist herself." The woman handed over our bags. "Well, you be careful out there. Woods can be dangerous for folks who don't know them." Another warning disguised as concern. We carried our supplies to the car, and I noticed the wolf from the diner standing outside the hardware store, watching us. Not threatening, just observing. Making sure we saw him seeing us. "They're marking us," Cale murmured as we loaded bags into the trunk. "Establishing that we're on their radar. It's a dominance thing." Should we acknowledge him? No, we're not challenging. We're not even interesting. We're just temporary. He closed the trunk with deliberate casualness. "Let's go. We've done enough for today." The drive back to the cabin felt longer than the drive in. I kept checking the rearview mirror, expecting to see vehicles following us, but the road stayed empty. The forest closed around us like a fist, and I felt the isolation of the location in a way I hadn't before. This was why my grandmother had chosen it. Far from curious eyes, far from casual visitors, far from anyone who might hear screaming from the basement. "You're thinking about her again," Cale said. "How can you tell?" Your hands tighten on the wheel. Your jaw clenches. You get angry when you think about what she did here. "I'm allowed to be angry." "You are." He was quiet for a moment. "But don't let anger make you careless. We still need to survive the week." He was right, and I hated it. Hated that we had to be so calculated, so careful, so constantly aware of threats. But that was the world we lived in. One where showing weakness meant becoming prey. We reached the cabin as afternoon faded toward evening. As I unlocked the door, Cale suddenly grabbed my arm, his grip tight enough to bruise. "Wait. What?" "Someone's been here." His nostrils flared, scenting. "Recently. Within the last few hours." My heart kicked into overdrive. "Are they still here?" "No, but they were inside." He pushed past me, moving through the cabin with predatory grace, checking rooms, opening closets, looking for signs of intrusion. I followed, my eyes scanning for anything out of place. The main room looked the same. Kitchen untouched. "Bedroom. Here," Cale called from my grandmother's bedroom. I joined him, and saw immediately what had changed. The loose board under the bed, the one that had hidden the money and documents, was still in place. But it had been moved. Slightly. The dust pattern was different, the angle wrong. "Someone knew where to look," I said. "Or someone was very thorough." Cale knelt, examining the board without touching it. "They didn't take anything, the compartment's still sealed, but they know it's here now. Know we have resources." "Who?" "Could be the pack from town, checking on the new arrivals. Could be council sending someone to verify your grandmother's death. Could be." He stood abruptly. "Check the bathroom. The medication cabinet." I ran to the bathroom, threw open the cabinet. The suppressants my grandmother had mentioned in her letter, the chemicals she'd used to keep Cale docile, were gone. Every bottle. The cabinet was completely empty, except for basic first aid supplies. "They took the drugs," I called back. Cale appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. "Then it's definitely council, or someone working for them. Those medications aren't available commercially. They're controlled substances, illegal outside of authorized research facilities. So they know. They know my grandmother had a test subject, maybe. Or they know she was conducting unauthorized research, and they're collecting evidence." He moved past me, checking windows, testing locks. Either way, we need to assume we're under surveillance now. No more planning conversations inside the cabin. No accessing those encrypted drives here. Nothing that could be recorded or monitored. How long do we have? I don't know. Could be days. Could be hours. He returned to the main room, his movements tense, controlled. We need to accelerate our timeline. Tomorrow, we drive to Portland. Access those files in a public internet cafe like we planned. Then, we disappear. What about establishing our cover? We were supposed to stay a week. Plans change. Survival is more important than cover. He met my eyes, and I saw fear there, real fear, the kind that came from knowing exactly what happened to people who attracted council attention. Elena, if they connect me to this place, to your grandmother's research, we're both dead. Not arrested, not interrogated, just dead. They don't take chances with security risks. I wanted to argue, wanted to say we should stick to the plan, maintain our cover, be smart and careful. But the look in his eyes stopped me. He'd survived 6 years of torture. If he said we needed to run, we needed to run. Okay, I said. We leave tomorrow, first light, drive to Portland, access the files, then disappear completely. And tonight? Tonight we pack. Take only what we need. Leave everything else. I looked around the cabin, my grandmother's last refuge, her laboratory, her prison for a boy she'd claimed to want to help. Let them have it. Let them find nothing but an empty cabin and questions they can't answer. I am Z. Cale nodded, some of the tension easing from his shoulders. I'll take first watch. You sleep. We'll switch at midnight. Watch for what? For whoever comes back. He moved to the window, his silhouette dark against the fading light. Because they will come back. People always do. I wanted to tell him he was being paranoid. That we were overreacting. That maybe the intrusion was innocent, just a local checking on the place, or an animal that had gotten inside somehow. But I'd learned enough in the past 2 days to know. Paranoia kept you alive. Trust got you killed. So I took the first shift, sleeping while Cale watched the darkness. And when midnight came and he woke me to switch, I took my place at the window and watched the forest for movement, for threats, for whoever was out there watching us back. The trees revealed nothing. But I felt eyes on us anyway, invisible, patient, waiting. Tomorrow, we would run. Tonight, we kept vigil. And somewhere in the darkness, someone was deciding whether to let us go or drag us down into the same abyss that had swallowed Cale for 6 years. I gripped the curtain tighter and kept watching. Chapter 7. The Drive to Revelation. We left before dawn, taking only what we could carry in 2 backpacks, and the canvas bag full of cash. Everything else, the furniture, the remaining documents, the cabin itself, we abandoned, like shed skin. Cale moved through the rooms one final time, wiping down surfaces for fingerprints out of habit, erasing evidence of our presence. Not that it would matter if the council truly wanted to find us, but small precautions accumulated into survival. I'd barely slept during my watch. Every sound from the forest had set my nerves, jangling branches, cracking, animals moving, the wind itself seeming hostile. Now, loading the car in pre-dawn darkness, exhaustion made my hands clumsy. Here. Cale took my backpack, stowing it efficiently in the trunk. You drive the first shift. I'll navigate and keep watch. Watch for what, exactly? Vehicles following us, drones, anything that suggests we're being tracked. He closed the trunk quietly. The council has resources. If they're interested in us, they won't make it obvious. We drove away from the cabin without looking back. The forest swallowed it from view within minutes, and I felt a strange mixture of relief and loss. That place had held my grandmother's secrets, Cale's suffering, and the end of my innocence about what family meant. Good riddance. The road to Portland was a 6-hour drive through increasingly populated territory, small towns giving way to suburbs bleeding into the sprawling urban landscape of Oregon's largest city. As we drove, the sky lightened from black to gray to pale morning blue. Cale had shifted fully into David Morrison now, not just the features, but the entire persona. He sat differently, moved differently, even spoke with a slight Canadian accent that made him sound softer, less dangerous. Watching him, I was struck by how completely he could transform without actually shifting forms. "Where did you learn to do that?" I asked as we merged onto the interstate. "The identity construction, the personality changes. That's not instinct. Your grandmother taught me." His voice was neutral, carefully controlled. She'd bring me books, psychology texts, acting manuals, studies on body language and microexpressions. Said if I was going to be valuable to the council, I needed to learn to pass as human, to blend in. She was training you to be a spy, or an assassin, or infiltrator, whatever they needed. He stared out the window at passing trees. She never told me explicitly what the endgame was, but I could read between the lines. The council wanted someone who could shift into multiple forms and convincingly mimic different people, someone disposable who could do their dirty work, but they wanted you dead. They wanted me controlled first, dead second. If I could be useful, they'd use me. If not. He made a throat-cutting gesture. Your grandmother was supposed to figure out which category I fell into. And she decided you were too valuable to waste but too dangerous to release. Exactly. He glanced at me. That's why she kept me for 6 years instead of the 1 or 2 the council authorized. She was stalling, claiming she needed more time, more research, more data. Buying time for what? I don't know. Maybe for herself, maybe for me. Maybe she was trying to figure out how to save you. Or maybe she was just a coward who couldn't commit to either saving me or killing me, so she chose the comfortable middle ground of continued torture. His voice hardened. Don't make her into a hero posthumously, Elena. She doesn't deserve it. He was right. I kept trying to find redemption in my grandmother's actions, kept searching for evidence that she'd been secretly good all along. But the truth was simpler and uglier. She'd been a scientist who valued research over humanity, security over courage. She'd done some terrible things for some complex reasons, and at the end, she'd tried to make it right. That didn't erase 6 years of harm. I'm sorry, I said. Stop apologizing for her. I'm not. I'm apologizing for me. For wanting her to be better than she was. For trying to find excuses. Cale was quiet for a moment. Then, thank you. For being honest about it. We drove in silence for a while. Each lost in our own thoughts. The traffic thickened as we approached Portland's outer suburbs. More cars, more people, more potential threats, and hiding places in equal measure. Tell me about the encrypted drives, I said, needing to focus on something practical. What do you think is actually on them? The one labeled insurance is probably exactly what it sounds like, evidence your grandmother collected to protect herself. Documentation of council activities. Maybe proof of their systematic elimination of anomalies like me. She was smart enough to know that possessing that information made her valuable alive and dangerous dead. And the other one? Could be her complete research on me, genetic analysis, behavioral observations, everything she learned about the Primus bloodline. He drummed his fingers on his knee. Or it could be something else entirely. Communication records, financial transactions, names of other council scientists doing similar work. You think there are others? Other researchers with other test subjects? I'd be shocked if there weren't. His voice went cold. The council doesn't put all their eggs in one basket. If your grandmother was studying me, someone else was studying someone different. Multiple facilities, multiple subjects, all compartmentalized, so no single researcher knows the full scope. The implications made my stomach turn. So there could be dozens of people locked in basements right now. Hundreds, even, at least. The council's been operating for 3,000 years. That's a lot of time to accumulate secrets and bodies. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Then we find them. We use whatever's on those drives to locate other facilities, other victims. Elena. Cale's hand covered mine on the wheel, gentle but firm. One step at a time. First, we survive today. We access the files. We learn what we're dealing with. And then we make a plan. Don't get ahead of yourself. You sound like you don't want to help them. I sound like someone who knows the difference between noble intentions and realistic capabilities. He withdrew his hand. I spent 6 years in a basement. I know what it's like to hope someone will rescue you and have that hope destroyed again and again. I won't make promises I can't keep. So what? We just save ourselves and leave everyone else to suffer? No. His voice softened. We save ourselves first so we have the strength and resources to help others. You can't pull someone out of drowning water if you're drowning yourself. Basic triage. He was right, and I knew it. But the thought of others suffering while we ran felt like cowardice, like becoming the same kind of person who'd looked away from my grandmother's work because acknowledging it was uncomfortable. I hate this, I said quietly. I hate that surviving means being selfish. Surviving isn't selfish, it's prerequisite. Cale settled back in his seat. And for what it's worth, I think we will help others. Eventually, when we're strong enough. But today isn't that day. We crossed into Portland's city limits around mid-morning. The urban sprawl was jarring after days in the forest, concrete and steel and humanity packed tight. Traffic slowed to a crawl as we navigated toward the downtown core. There, Cale pointed to a cluster of coffee shops and internet cafes near Powell's Books. We want somewhere busy. Lots of foot traffic. Somewhere our presence won't be memorable. We parked in a public garage and walked 2 blocks to a cafe called Binary Grounds, a hipster establishment full of people hunched over laptops, the air thick with coffee and the click of keyboards. Perfect anonymity. We ordered drinks, coffee for me, tea for Cale, and claimed a table in the back corner. Cale pulled out a laptop he'd found in my grandmother's cabin, old but functional, and booted it up while I kept watch on the other customers. No one paid us any attention. We were just 2 more people in a sea of faces, indistinguishable from the dozen other pairs having quiet conversations over mediocre coffee. Ready? Cale asked, holding up the encrypted drive labeled insurance. Ready. He plugged it in. The laptop whirred, processing. A window popped up, requesting a password. Shit, Cale muttered. Of course she'd password protect it. Try obvious things. Her birthday. My birthday. The cabin address. He tried them all. None worked. The system gave us 5 attempts before it would lock permanently. What about yours? I asked. Your birthday, your name, something connected to you. Why would she use something connected to me? Because you were her life's work for 6 years. Maybe she thought of you as... I hesitated, not sure how to phrase it. As what? Her project? Her possession? As someone she thought about constantly. I said carefully. Even if it was in twisted ways. Try it. He typed. Cale. Nothing. Cale 0813 for his birthday. Nothing. Primus. Nothing. 2 attempts left. What about the riddle? I said suddenly. From your first night, you said she asked you a riddle. Cale's eyes widened. The answer. She wanted to know the answer. His fingers flew over the keyboard. A promise. The drive unlocked. We stared at the screen as folders began appearing. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Years of accumulated data organized by date, by subject, by facility code. Holy shit, Cale breathed. This isn't just insurance. This is everything. I leaned closer, scanning folder names. They were coded alphanumeric designations that meant nothing to me, but the sheer volume was staggering. Cale opened a folder at random. Inside, surveillance photos of a facility in Seattle. Floor plans, personnel records, and photographs of subjects, young shifters, all of them showing some anomaly or unusual trait, all of them with the same dead-eyed expression Cale had worn in my grandmother's photos. There are 12 facilities, Cale said, clicking through folders with increasing speed. 12 that she knew about. At least. Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Denver, Chicago, Toronto, Montreal, Boston, Atlanta, Dallas, Phoenix, Las Vegas, each one running similar experiments, each one with multiple subjects. How many subjects total? He found a master file, opened it, went very still. 47, he said quietly. 47 confirmed, plus another 32 suspected but unverified. Nearly 80 people. 80 lives disrupted, destroyed, confined in the name of preserving council power. We have to. Not here. Cale's voice was urgent. We download everything to a separate drive, then we get out. This is too much data, too much exposure. Someone could be monitoring access. He was already moving, pulling out a blank external drive. copying files with practiced efficiency. While he worked, I scanned the cafe. Still no one paying attention. Still just anonymous faces in an anonymous crowd. But I felt exposed anyway. Like the information we were accessing was radioactive. Like it marked us just by proximity. The download took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of sitting still while my leg bounced nervously under the table, while my eyes tracked every person who entered or left the cafe, while my mind raced with the implications of what we'd found. 47 people. 47 basements. 47 lives reduced to subject codes and experiment logs. Done, Cale said finally. He ejected both drives, pocketed the new one, and deliberately snapped the original in half. Then he dropped the pieces into his coffee, destroying any remaining data. Let's go. We left the cafe trying to look casual, unhurried. Just two people finishing their coffee, heading back to whatever mundane activities filled their day. David Morrison and Elena Winters, research assistant and grieving granddaughter, completely unremarkable. But my heart was hammering, and I could feel Cale's tension like a live wire beside me. We made it back to the car without incident. Drove out of downtown following a random route designed to reveal any tale. Changed directions twice. Doubled back once. Standard evasion tactics. Cale had learned from my grandmother's psychology texts. No one followed, at least not obviously. Now what? I asked once we'd cleared the city limits, heading north on Highway 5 toward Seattle instead of back toward the cabin. Now we find somewhere safe to actually review the files. Somewhere off-grid where we can think without looking over our shoulders every 5 seconds. Where's off-grid when the council controls everything? Human spaces. Cale pulled out a map, actual paper, untraceable. There are towns and cities where shifter presence is minimal. Places the council considers beneath their notice. Small enough to hide in, big enough to disappear into. He pointed to a town called Cascade Falls, population 2,000. Nestled in the mountains between Portland and Seattle. Here, logging town that went bust 20 years ago. Mostly humans now, some retirees, some people who wanted to drop off the grid. No major pack presence because there's nothing worth controlling. How do you know all this? Your grandmother's maps, remember the red marks? She'd annotated safe zones, 2 places where council surveillance was minimal. I memorized them during my watch last night. Of course he had. 6 years of captivity had taught him to absorb every scrap of information, to catalog everything that might aid survival. Cascade Falls it is, I said. We drove in silence for another hour, the landscape shifting from urban sprawl to rural farmland to forested mountains. My exhaustion was catching up to me now. 2 nights of minimal sleep, constant adrenaline, the emotional whiplash of the past 3 days. Pull over at the next rest stop, Cale said. We'll switch. You need to sleep. I'm fine. You're falling asleep at the wheel. I can see it. Pull over. I wanted to argue, but he was right. My eyes were burning, my reaction time sluggish. I took the next exit, found a rest area, and surrendered the driver's seat. Cale adjusted the mirrors with David's careful efficiency. Sleep. I'll wake you when we get there. What if someone? I'll know before they get close enough to threaten us. I can smell them, remember? Now sleep. I reclined the passenger seat, meaning to just rest my eyes for a moment. But exhaustion pulled me under like a riptide, and I was gone. I dreamed of basements. Of chains and silver and amber eyes that had forgotten how to hope. But in the dream, I was the one chained, and my grandmother stood over me with a clipboard, asking the same question over and over. What's the answer to the riddle? And I kept saying, a promise. But she'd shake her head sadly and write something down, and the chains would get tighter, and I'd scream but no sound would come out, because I didn't matter. I'd never mattered. I was just another broken thing. Elena. I jerked awake to find Cale's hand on my shoulder, his expression concerned. We'd stopped moving. Through the windshield, I could see we were parked in front of a small motel, the kind with external doors and peeling paint, and a vacancy sign that looked permanently illuminated. Where are we? Cascade Falls. You slept for 3 hours. He withdrew his hand. You were having a nightmare. Want to talk about it? No. I sat up, trying to shake off the dream's lingering dread. Did anyone follow us? Not that I could detect. And I was very careful. He gestured at the motel. I got us a room. Cash, no ID required. The manager is human and didn't ask questions. Just one room? Safer that way. We can take shifts sleeping, keep watch on the door. Plus, it maintains our cover if anyone does check research assistant and employer, maintaining propriety, but traveling together for convenience. It made sense. Practical. But something about sharing a room with him felt different now. More intimate than our nights in the cabin had been. Maybe because we'd crossed some threshold during the drive. Moved from strangers working together to something else. Partners. Pack. Whatever that meant. Okay, I said. Let's see what we're working with. The motel room was exactly as depressing as the exterior suggested. 2 double beds with thin comforters. A TV that probably didn't work. A bathroom with tiles that had been white sometime in the last century. But it was clean enough, private enough, and most importantly, anonymous enough. Cale set up the laptop on the small table near the window. I ordered pizza from a place down the street, cash on delivery, no names necessary, and we settled in to finally examine what my grandmother had spent years accumulating. The files were organized with scientific precision. Each facility had its own folder. Within each folder, floor plans, personnel rosters, security protocols, supply orders, and subject files. We started with the Seattle facility, the one closest to us. The one where, according to the master list, 6 subjects were currently housed. Cale opened the first subject file. Subject SFEA, null fear designation. Olivia Chen, age at intake. 14 current age. 19 anomaly. Empathic projection can sense and influence emotional states of others within 50-meter radius. Status, containment level 3 notes. Subject shows resistance to standard conditioning. Recommend increased isolation to prevent pack bonding with other subjects. There was a photograph, a girl woman now with dark hair and eyes that held the same emptiness I'd seen in Cale's photos. The look of someone who'd stopped fighting because fighting only made it worse. Empathic projection, I said. That's not shape-shifting. No. Cale's voice was tight. That's something else. Some shifters can sense emotions, it's related to pack bonding, but projecting them? Influencing others' emotional states? That's practically mind control. So the council isn't just targeting unusual shifters. They're targeting anyone with abilities they can't control, or abilities they want to control and weaponize. He opened another file. Subject. SFSEA07. Designation. Thomas Reeves, age at intake. 16 current age. 22 anomaly. Partial shift capability, can transform individual body parts without full shift. Maintain hybrid form indefinitely. Status. Containment level 5 highest. Notes. Subject extremely dangerous. Multiple escape attempts. Recommend termination if conditioning continues to fail. More photos. A young man with scars that looked like they came from silver restraints similar to what Cale had worn. In one photo, his right arm was fully transformed into something between bear and wolf, massive and clawed, while the rest of his body remained human. The notation at the bottom of the file made my blood run cold. Scheduled for termination, the 15th of April 2025. That's today, I said. April 15 is today. Cale went very still. They're going to kill him. We don't know that. Maybe they postponed. Maybe they don't postpone. His voice was flat. When the council decides you're too dangerous or too expensive to maintain, you disappear. Efficiently. Permanently. Your grandmother's files show it happening to 7 other subjects over the past 6 years. 7 people who'd been deemed unsalvageable and eliminated like failed experiments. We have to help him, I said. Elena, we have to. I grabbed his arm, forcing him to look at me. You said we'd help others when we were strong enough. When we had resources. Well, we have my grandmother's money and her intelligence. We have floor plans and security protocols. We have everything we need to at least try. We have information that's potentially months old. Security changes. Protocols update. We'd be walking into a facility designed to contain people like me, except worse because this is a council operation, not one scientist working alone. So we'll be careful. Careful doesn't matter when you're outmatched. Frustration bled into his voice. I want to help them. Every single person in these files, I want to break down their doors and set them free. But wanting isn't the same as being able. We could get ourselves killed and accomplish nothing. Or we could save someone's life. Or we could throw our lives away on a suicide mission and leave 46 other people with no hope at all. He stood, pacing the small room. You're thinking with your heart. I need you to think with your head. My head says that if we do nothing, Thomas Reeves dies today, and tomorrow, someone else, and the day after that, someone else. When does it stop? When do we decide we're strong enough, or resourced enough, or ready enough? Cale stopped pacing, his back to me. His shoulders were rigid with tension, with the weight of impossible choices. I don't know, he said quietly. I don't know how to balance surviving and saving. All I know is 6 years ago, I hoped someone would rescue me, and no one came. And I learned that hope was just another way to hurt. The pain in his voice cracked something in my chest. This wasn't about strategy or resources or timing. This was about a boy who'd been abandoned by everyone who should have protected him, who'd learned that survival meant trusting no one, depending on nothing but yourself. I moved to stand beside him, not touching but close. You're right, I said. Hope is dangerous. It makes you vulnerable. It sets you up for disappointment. But the alternative is accepting that the world is exactly as cruel as it appears. That power always wins. That people like us don't matter. I took a breath. And I can't accept that. Not anymore. Cale turned to face me. His amber eyes, he'd removed the blue contacts hours ago, searched my face for something. You really want to do this, he said. Break into a council facility. Risk everything for someone we've never met. Yes. Even though it's probably suicide. Even though... He was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, impossibly, he smiled. Okay. Okay? Okay, we'll try. We'll plan it carefully. We'll use every advantage we have. And if it looks impossible, if the risk is too high, we abort. He held out his hand. But we try. For Thomas Reeves. For everyone in those files. We try. I took his hand. His grip was warm, strong, steady despite everything. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me yet. We might both be dead by tomorrow. Then we'll be dead trying to do something right. Noble and stupid, he said, but his smile was genuine now. Pack of 2 against the council. What could go wrong? Everything, I thought. Absolutely everything. But for the first time since finding Cale in that basement, I felt like we were doing more than just surviving. We were choosing to fight, and maybe that was worth dying for. Chapter 8. The Breaking of Chains. Planning a rescue mission against the council required resources we didn't have, expertise we'd never developed, and a level of recklessness that bordered on insanity. We had 6 hours until midnight, the time Cale insisted we'd have the best chance of infiltrating the Seattle facility. 6 hours to turn my grandmother's intelligence into an actionable plan. 6 hours to prepare for what would likely be our deaths. We spread the files across both motel beds, creating a map of our impossible task. The Seattle facility was located beneath a pharmaceutical research building in the industrial district, legitimate business on the surface, nightmare below. 3 subterranean levels. The subjects were housed on level 3, the deepest level, accessible only through security checkpoints that required biometric identification and council authorization codes. Your grandmother had access codes, Cale said, pointing to a document dated 2 months before her death. But they're old. They might not work anymore. Do we have any other options? We could try to acquire current codes, but that would require intercepting council communications or compromising their security network. Both are beyond our capabilities. He traced the facility layout with his finger. Our best bet is the service entrance. Food deliveries, medical supplies, waste removal all come through here. Security is lighter because it's designed for human workers, not potential threats. So we pose as delivery workers? Maybe. Or we create a distraction that pulls security away from the service entrance long enough for us to slip through. He looked up at me. How comfortable are you with arson? Excuse me? Small fire. Controlled. In the dumpster area behind the building. Enough smoke to trigger alarms and pull security to investigate, but not enough to actually endanger anyone. His expression was utterly serious. Fire is chaos. Chaos creates opportunities. I stared at him. You learned this from psychology textbooks? I learned this from 6 years of studying how your grandmother's security systems worked and imagining ways to exploit them. He returned to the files. Every facility has the same basic weakness. They're designed to keep people in, not to keep determined people out. The council has gotten comfortable, arrogant. They don't expect resistance. And once we're inside, then it gets complicated. He pulled out a hand-drawn map of level 3. 6 subjects, housed in separate cells. We can't evacuate all of them, not in one night, not without a team. So we prioritize. Thomas Reeves. Thomas Reeves, he agreed. We extract him, we get out. If opportunity allows, we grab intelligence on the other subjects, current status, security changes, anything that might help future rescue attempts. But extraction is primary. Intelligence is secondary. Survival is mandatory. What about the other subjects? We're just leaving them? Cale's jaw tightened. Yes, for now. I hate it as much as you do. But 5 people we can't save are better than 6 people who stay trapped because we died trying to be heroes. He was right. I hated it. But he was right. We spent the next 3 hours preparing. Cale used some of my grandmother's cash to acquire supplies from various stores. Dark clothing, bolt cutters, a first aid kit, burner phones, and materials for creating our distraction. I studied the facility layouts until I could navigate them blind, memorizing exit routes and emergency protocols. As evening darkened into night, I felt the weight of what we were attempting settle over me. This wasn't theoretical anymore. This wasn't planning and strategy. In a few hours, we'd be breaking into a council facility, confronting the same power structure that had authorized Cale's torture and dozens of others. We could die, probably would die, but at least we'd die trying to matter. Elena. Cale's voice pulled me from my spiraling thoughts. He'd finished changing into dark clothes, black cargo pants, long-sleeve shirt, boots designed for running. He looked like a different person, harder, dangerous. You don't have to do this. You could wait here. Let me go alone. No. I'm serious. This is my fight. You didn't ask for any of this. Neither did you. I stood, facing him. And you're wrong, this is our fight. The council took 6 years from you. They took my grandmother's humanity. They've taken lives and futures from 47 people we know about, and probably hundreds more we don't. Someone has to stand against that. Someone. Not necessarily us. Who else? I challenged. Who else has the information, the resources, the motivation? Who else even knows what's happening? He had no answer for that. We're pack, I said quietly. You told me that means not abandoning each other when things get hard. Well, things are about to get very hard, and I'm not abandoning you. Something shifted in Cale's expression, surprise giving way to something deeper. Gratitude, maybe. Or recognition that he wasn't alone anymore, that someone had chosen to stand with him despite the cost. Okay, he said finally, but you follow my lead. I've got combat training, your grandmother made sure of that. If things go wrong, if I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Understood. He held my gaze for another moment, then nodded. Let's go save someone. The drive to Seattle took 90 minutes. We arrived at the industrial district around 11 p.m. late enough that most legitimate workers had gone home, early enough that security wouldn't be at its most alert. The pharmaceutical building was exactly as the files described. 5 stories of glass and steel, well lit and professional, giving no hint of the horrors beneath. We parked 3 blocks away in a public lot where our car wouldn't stand out. Cale had shifted his features slightly, nothing dramatic, just enough to blur facial recognition if we were caught on camera. I'd done what I could with my appearance, hair tied back, dark clothes, unremarkable enough to be forgotten. Service entrance is on the east side, Cale murmured as we approached on foot, staying in shadows. We've got maybe a 2-minute window between security patrols. I'll set the fire, trigger the alarm. When security responds, we go in. What about cameras? Can't avoid them completely. But your grandmother's files indicate they're monitored by human security guards, not AI. Humans get distracted. Humans make mistakes. He pulled out the materials for our distraction, rags soaked in accelerant, a simple lighter. Ready? My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might burst through my ribs. Ready. We moved to the dumpster area exactly where the files indicated, tucked against the building's east wall. Cale worked quickly, stuffing rags into a commercial dumpster, arranging them for maximum smoke with minimal actual flame. This wasn't about destruction. This was about chaos. He lit the rags and we retreated into shadows. 30 seconds later, smoke began billowing, thick, black, toxic-looking. The fire alarm shrieked to life, emergency lights strobing. We watched as security personnel emerged from the building, rushing toward the fire with extinguishers, their attention completely focused on the apparent crisis. Now, Cale hissed. We sprinted for the service entrance. The door was locked with a keypad, but Kyle had my grandmother's codes. He punched in the numbers with steady fingers. The lock clicked open. We were inside. The service corridor was stark white, fluorescent lit, empty. Our footsteps echoed too loud as we moved toward the stairs that would take us down. Down to level 1, level 2, level 3, down to where the subjects were kept. We encountered the first checkpoint at the stairwell entrance. A biometric scanner, and armed guard human, wearing body armor, carrying a weapon that looked like it fired tranquilizer darts rather than bullets. The council didn't want dead guards. They wanted quiet containment. Cale moved before I could process what was happening. One moment he was beside me. The next, he'd closed the distance to the guard, his hand partially shifted, clawed striking with surgical precision at pressure points. The guard dropped without making a sound. Jesus, I breathed. Your grandmother was very thorough in her training, Cale said flatly, dragging the unconscious guard into a supply closet. Take his access card. We'll need it. I fumbled the card from the guard's belt, trying not to think about how casually Cale had neutralized him, trying not to remember that he'd spent 6 years learning to be a weapon. We descended. Level 1 was administrative offices, laboratories, storage, empty at this hour. Level 2 was medical examination rooms, surgical suites, rooms filled with equipment I didn't want to identify, also empty, though here the smell was different. Antiseptic, and something underneath it. Something that smelled like suffering. Level 3 was where the files said the subjects were housed. The stairwell door required the access card plus a 6-digit code. Cale tried my grandmother's code. It didn't work. Shit, he muttered, trying another combination from the files. They updated security. Can you bypass it? Maybe. Give me a minute. He examined the keypad, then pulled out a small tool from his pocket, something he'd acquired during our supply run. Your grandmother taught me basic lockpicking. Electronic locks are trickier, but the principle is similar. While he worked, I kept watch down the corridor. Still empty, but I could hear sounds now, muffled, distant. Voices, movement, or just the building settling. Got it, Cale said as the lock clicked open. Level 3 was nothing like the sterile professionalism of the levels above. This was a basement in the truest sense, concrete walls, harsh lighting, the smell of fear and confinement so thick it was almost visible. The corridor stretched ahead, lined with doors. Heavy doors. Reinforced, each with a small window and a placard indicating cell number. SFSE A07 should be at the end, Cale said, consulting the mental map he'd memorized. 5th door on the left. We moved quickly but carefully. As we passed cells, I caught glimpses through the windows, figures huddled in corners, chains, silver glinting in dim light. Each one a person reduced to a subject number, each one someone's child, someone's family, someone who'd been deemed too different to be allowed freedom. The fury that rose in me was incandescent. We reached cell SFSEA07. Through the window, I could see him, Thomas Reeves, according to the files. He was sitting on a bare cot, his head in his hands, looking like someone who'd accepted death and was simply waiting for it to arrive. Cale swiped the access card. The lock disengaged. Thomas's head snapped up as the door opened, his expression cycling through confusion, fear, and desperate hope in rapid succession. Who, he started. "We're here to get you out," Cale said quickly, stepping into the cell. "My name is Cale. This is Elena. We have approximately 5 minutes before security realizes the fire was a distraction and locks down the facility." "Can you walk?" Thomas stared at us like we were hallucinations. "This is a trick. Some new test. They're testing to see if I'll cooperate. It's not a trick." I moved forward, making my voice as steady as possible. "We have intelligence from someone who documented this facility. We know what they've done to you. We're here to help." "No one comes to help," Thomas said, but his voice cracked with wanting to believe. "No one ever comes." "We came," Cale said simply. He held out his hand. "Please, we don't have time to convince you. Either trust us and live, or stay here and die. Your termination is scheduled for today. If we leave without you, you're dead." The blunt honesty seemed to cut through Thomas's doubt. He looked at Cale's outstretched hand, then at me, then back to Cale. "You're serious?" "Completely." Thomas took Cale's hand. What happened next happened fast. Cale pulled Thomas to his feet. I moved to the door to keep watch. And that's when the alarm started, not the fire alarm, but something deeper, more urgent, a lockdown alarm. "They know," Cale said. "We need to move. Now." We ran. Thomas stumbled. 6 years of confinement had left him weak, but Cale practically carried him, his shifter strength compensating for Thomas's diminished state. We made it back to the stairwell, started climbing. Level 2. Voices now, shouting, getting closer. Level 1. The door at the top of the stairs was sealed. Red lights flashing. Lockdown protocol engaged. "Can you break it?" I asked Cale. "Not without full shift, and that would trigger every alarm in the building." He looked around frantically. "There has to be another way out. Emergency exits, ventilation shafts, something." "There," Thomas said, pointing with a shaking hand. "Maintenance access. I memorized the blueprints during examinations. They'd wheel me past it. There's a tunnel that connects to the city storm drain system. Can you find it?" "I think so." We followed Thomas's directions through corridors that seemed to shift and multiply. Emergency lights, strobing, alarms screaming. Twice we had to hide from security teams rushing past. Once, Cale had to partially shift to tear through a locked door. Finally, we found the maintenance access, a small door marked authorized personnel only. Cale broke the lock with brute force. Beyond was a tunnel, dark, narrow, smelling of mildew and worse things. But it led away from the facility, away from the council, towards something that might be freedom. We ran. The tunnel seemed endless. My lungs burned, my legs screamed. Behind us, I could hear pursuit voices echoing, footsteps pounding. They were coming. "There," Thomas gasped. "Storm drain access, ladder up to street level." We reached the ladder, rusted metal, questionable stability. Thomas went first, climbing with desperate strength. Then me, then Cale. We emerged into nighttime Seattle through a storm drain grate in an alley 3 blocks from the facility. Rain was falling, when had it started raining, washing away evidence, making us harder to track. "Keep moving," Cale said. "We need distance before they organize a proper search." We ran through rain-slicked streets, through alleys and side roads, putting as much space as possible between us and the facility. Finally, when Thomas collapsed against a wall, too exhausted to continue, Cale called a halt. "Here." He pulled out one of the burner phones, dialed a number I didn't recognize. "I'm calling a contact, someone your grandmother documented as safe. They'll provide temporary shelter." "Who?" I asked. "Someone else the council wronged. Someone with reason to help us." He waited as the phone rang. "If this works, we'll have a safe house for a few days. Time to plan our next move." "Next move?" Thomas said between gasping breaths. "You're insane. The council will hunt us. They'll never stop hunting us." "Probably," Cale agreed. "But they were going to kill you tonight anyway." "At least now you've got a fighting chance." Someone answered the phone. Cale spoke in low, urgent tones explaining who we were, what we'd done, requesting sanctuary. I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but eventually Cale nodded. "We've got shelter," he said. 40 minutes north. They're sending a car. We waited in the rain, 3 fugitives who'd just committed treason against the most powerful organization in the shifter world. I should have been terrified, should have been regretting every choice that led to this moment. But looking at Thomas alive, free, breathing air that wasn't filtered through a cell's ventilation system, I felt something else entirely. Hope. Dangerous, foolish, absolutely necessary hope. The safe house turned out to be a compound in the mountains north of Seattle, 3 buildings surrounded by forest, protected by people who'd also escaped council control. Our contact was a woman named Sarah, maybe 40, with scars that spoke of her own history with institutional cruelty. She didn't ask questions, just showed us to rooms, provided clothes and food, and promised we could stay as long as we needed. That first night, we slept like the dead. All 3 of us collapsed into beds, our bodies finally believing we'd survived. I woke to daylight and the smell of coffee. Cale was sitting at the kitchen table with Sarah, spreading out my grandmother's files. Thomas was there too, looking better after sleep and food, studying the documents with the intensity of someone seeing their own nightmare documented. 47 subjects, Sarah said quietly. My God, I knew it was bad, but I didn't know it was this systematic. It's worse than systematic, Cale said. It's industrial. The council has been running these facilities for decades, eliminating anyone who threatens their power structure, anyone who proves their ideology is built on lies. So what do we do? Thomas asked. We can't fight them. We don't have the numbers, the resources, we have information. I interrupted, joining them at the table. We have proof of what they've done. Names, locations, evidence of systematic torture and murder. That's power. Information only matters if you can disseminate it, Sarah said. The council controls media, communications, public narrative. Who's going to believe us? Other shifters who've been hurt by the system, Cale said. Families of disappeared subjects. Humans who work in council-controlled facilities and have seen things they weren't supposed to see. We build a network, quietly, carefully. We find others like us and we organize. That's not a plan, Thomas said. That's a fantasy. Maybe. Cale met his eyes steadily. But fantasy is better than dying in a cell, and spreading information is better than letting the council continue unchallenged. He's right, I said. We can't fight them directly, not yet. But we can expose them. We can make it impossible for them to continue operating in secret, and maybe, eventually, we find enough allies to actually challenge their authority. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then, there are others. Not many, but some. People who've escaped or been released. People who know the truth. I can make contacts. I can help plan extractions, Thomas offered. I've memorized blueprints for 3 different facilities from my transfers. I know their security protocols. I can provide safe houses, Sarah added. There's a network informal, disconnected, but real. People who've learned to survive outside council control. We looked at each other, 4 people who should have been nothing, who the council had dismissed as broken or dangerous or expendable. 4 people who'd just committed to something that might be revolution or might be suicide. Cale held out his hand, palm down. Pack, he said. I placed my hand on his. Pack. Thomas hesitated, then added his hand. Pack. Sarah smiled and completed the gesture. Pack of 4 against the council. We're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Can it be both? I asked. Everyone laughed, real laughter. The kind that comes from surviving the impossible and deciding to try again anyway. 3 months later, the network grew slowly, carefully, 1 person at a time. We extracted 3 more subjects from facilities using intelligence from my grandmother's files. 2 extractions succeeded completely, 1 failed. And we lost a volunteer in the process. A man named David who'd been held for 4 years, and died getting others to safety. We mourned him. Added his name to a list we were keeping. A list of everyone the council had taken, everyone they'd hurt, everyone who deserved to be remembered. The council knew something was happening. Security increased at facilities, protocols changed, but they couldn't identify the threat. We were careful, paranoid. We used encrypted communications, multiple identities, constant movement. We never stayed in one place long enough to be tracked, and we spread information, carefully curated leaks to sympathetic journalists, anonymous tips to human rights organizations, evidence delivered to shifter families who'd lost children to accidents and disappearances. We couldn't prove everything. The council's power was too entrenched, but we could plant seeds of doubt, make people question, make the truth harder to suppress. Cale became the face of our resistance, or rather, his story did. A video we released anonymously, showing his scars, his 3 forms, his testimony about 6 years of torture authorized by the council. It went viral in shifter communities, impossible to completely suppress despite the council's best efforts. Some called him a liar, some called him a hero, but no one could ignore him. I worked intelligence, coordinating extractions, managing safe houses, maintaining the network that kept us hidden. Turned out being invisible my whole life had taught me skills the council couldn't anticipate. I knew how to move through systems without being noticed, how to be present and forgettable at once. Thomas became our strategist, his mind that had memorized blueprints now dedicated to anticipating council responses and planning 3 moves ahead. And Sarah became our heart, the one who reminded us we were fighting for people, not just against oppression, who made sure every rescued subject had shelter, support, therapy for trauma we could barely comprehend. We were Pack, growing larger every day, but still centered on the promise we'd made to each other: survive, resist, expose, liberate. 6 months later, the council made their move. A coordinated strike against known safe houses, simultaneous raids in 5 cities. They'd been tracking us better than we'd realized, waiting for the right moment to eliminate the threat we represented. We lost people, good people, brave people. The network fractured, went underground even deeper, but we'd anticipated this. Cale had taught me that surviving meant assuming the worst and planning for it. We had backup locations, redundant communication systems, escape routes upon escape routes. The council won the battle, but they didn't win the war, because we'd accomplished something they hadn't anticipated. We'd made too many people aware of the truth. The raids themselves, executed with military precision in civilian areas, raised questions the council couldn't easily answer. Why were they so desperate to silence us? What were they hiding? More information leaked. More families demanded answers. More shifters began questioning a system they'd accepted their entire lives. The council's power was built on secrecy and the illusion of inevitability. We'd cracked that illusion, proven that resistance was possible, that the powerful could be challenged. It wasn't victory, not yet. But it was something. 1 year later, I stood on a mountain overlooking Cascade Falls, watching sunrise paint the valley gold. Cale joined me, his shoulder touching mine in comfortable familiarity. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, thinking about how far we've come. 37 subjects freed, 12 facilities exposed, the council's public approval rating down 20%. He smiled. Not bad for a pack that started with just the 2 of us. Not. We've lost people too, I said quietly. David, Sarah, others. I know. His expression sobered. We remember them. We honor them by continuing. We stood in silence, watching the sun rise. Below us, the valley was waking people starting their days, living lives that had nothing to do with councils or resistance or revolution. Normal, ordinary lives. That's what we were fighting for, really. The right to be ordinary. The right to be different without being destroyed. The right to exist without permission from those who deemed themselves powerful. Elena, Cale said, thank you. For what? For not leaving me in the dark. For choosing to fight. For being the kind of person who inherits a cabin and finds a monster, and decides maybe the monster deserves freedom too. I leaned into him, our connection deeper than pack, deeper than partnership. Something that had been forged in basements and safe houses and impossible rescues. Something that felt like family. You were never a monster, I said. You were always extraordinary. The world just needed to catch up. He kissed my forehead. Gentle, careful, reverent. The world's still catching up. But we've got time. How much time? As long as it takes. He took my hand. The councils ruled for 3,000 years. It might take another 100 to tear them down completely. But we've started something. Others will continue it. You think we'll win? I think we already have, in the ways that matter. We survived. We freed others. We proved that power isn't absolute. He squeezed my hand. That's victory enough for me. The sun finished rising, flooding the valley with light. Below, I could see our safe house, current home to 12 people the council had deemed disposable. 12 people who were learning to be whole again, 47 subjects in those original files. We'd freed 37. 10 remained. 10 people still suffering, still waiting, still hoping someone would come. The Seattle facility, I said. The one we hit first. They're reinforcing it, making it harder to breach. I know. I've been studying the new security protocols. There are still 4 subjects there, including Olivia Chen, the empath. Kale nodded. I've been thinking about her, about how someone with her abilities could help coordinate resistance if we could free her. So we're planning another extraction. Eventually. When we're ready. When the opportunity presents itself. He turned to face me fully. But that's tomorrow's problem. Today, we rest. Today, we remember why we're fighting. And why is that? He gestured to the valley, the safe house, the people slowly emerging to start their day. Because everyone deserves mornings like this. Everyone deserves the chance to watch the sunrise as a free person. I looked at him, this boy who'd been a monster, a victim, a weapon, and had become something else entirely, a leader, a friend, family. I love you, I said. The words surprised me even as I spoke them, but they felt true, complete. Kale's eyes widened, then softened. I love you too. Have for a while, I think. Just didn't know if I was allowed to say it. Why wouldn't you be allowed? Because you saved me. Because I didn't want you to feel obligated to love me back just because you freed me from a basement. His voice was vulnerable in a way it rarely was. I wanted you to love me because you chose to, not because you felt like you had to. I choose you, I said simply. Every day. Every decision. I choose you. He pulled me close, and we stood there on the mountain, watching the sunrise, planning revolution, building a future that might not come but that we'd fight for anyway. Below us, the world went on, ordinary and extraordinary, cruel and kind, broken and healing all at once, and somewhere in that world, 10 people remained in basements, waiting for rescue. We'd come for them, eventually, when we were ready, but today, we'd rest. Today, we'd let ourselves believe that survival wasn't just about staying alive. It was about building something worth living for. Epilogue. 2 years after Elena inherited her grandmother's cabin, the council didn't fall in a day. Institutions built over 3 millennia don't crumble from a single rebellion, but they crack, they fracture, they begin to show the rot beneath their polished surface. Our network grew. Quietly at first, then exponentially, as more people found courage to speak out. Former council employees. Shifters tired of hierarchy. Humans who'd seen too much. Families of victims demanding justice. We freed all 47 subjects from the original files. Some joined our resistance. Some disappeared into quiet lives, wanting nothing more to do with conflict. We honored both choices. The council retaliated, made examples, executed people they deemed traitors. But every execution created martyrs. Every act of violence proved our point, that their power was maintained through fear, not legitimacy. The tipping point came when a council member's own child, a wolf shifter with the ability to heal others, deemed too dangerous for that very gift, was scheduled for containment. The council member defected, bringing with her 2 decades of insider intelligence. That intelligence broke the story open. Major media couldn't ignore it anymore. International human rights organizations got involved. The shifter world's relationship with human populations depended on maintaining the fiction that they were civilized, controlled, ethical. Mass torture camps didn't fit that narrative. The council didn't fall. But they reformed. Slowly, grudgingly, with loud protests about tradition and security. But they changed, and that was enough. For now, I never lived in my grandmother's cabin again. The forest reclaimed it eventually, walls collapsing, floor rotting, nature erasing evidence of human cruelty. Good, let it return to the earth. Let the basement fill with soil and roots and life. Let the place that held so much suffering become something new. Cale and I built a different kind of life. Not quiet, we were too deep in resistance work for quiet, but purposeful. We ran safe houses, coordinated rescues, trained others in survival skills, built the network that would eventually help topple the council's worst excesses. And sometimes, on quiet mornings, we'd watch the sunrise together and remember how it started. With an inheritance, a basement, and two broken people who decided that broken together was stronger than whole and alone. The riddle my grandmother had asked Cale that first night had a simple answer: a promise. But the truth was more complex. A promise was nothing without follow-through. Commitment was meaningless without action. Love wasn't just a feeling, it was a choice you made every single day. Especially when that choice was hard. We'd promised to fight. To resist. To free those who couldn't free themselves. And we kept that promise. Not perfectly. Not without casualties or setbacks or moments of devastating loss. But we kept it. And in the end, that was what mattered. Not that we won easily, but that we refused to stop trying. The council's power would persist for years, maybe decades, but their absolute authority was broken. Their monopoly on truth, shattered. And that was enough. That was victory. We're told that monsters are born, that they emerge from darkness fully formed and irredeemable. But when you find a boy chained in a basement, when you see the scars institutions leave on bodies and souls, you learn the devastating truth. Monsters are made. Made by systems that value control over compassion. Made by people who choose comfort over courage. And if monsters can be made, they can be unmade. Not through violence, though sometimes violence is necessary for survival. Not through revenge, though anger is valid and fierce and justified. But through choosing, every single day, to see the humanity in those deemed unworthy. Through refusing to accept that power's cruelty is inevitable. Through building something better, even when better seems impossible. My name is Elena Winters. I inherited a cabin in the woods and found a wolf pup chained in the basement. That pup became a man. That man became my pack. That pack became a revolution. This is our story, but more importantly, it's the beginning of yours. Because somewhere, right now, someone is locked in a basement. Someone is being told they're worthless, dangerous, disposable, and they're waiting, hoping, believing that maybe, just maybe, someone will come. So go. Be someone's rescue. Be someone's hope. Be the person who refuses to leave others in the dark. The world won't change itself. But together, broken, scared, determined, we can change it. One basement at a time. One promise at a time. One choice at a time. If Elena and Cale's fight against impossible odds moved you, hit that subscribe button. Because resistance starts with refusing to be silent. Drop a comment with the name of someone you would risk everything to save, whether it's a real person or a character who deserves freedom. Let's build our own pack of people who won't abandon others in the dark. Next time, we're telling the story of Olivia Chen, the empath who could feel everyone's pain but her own. You won't want to miss it.